Pardon me, but it appears my car is experiencing some issues. We advise you to settle your remaining balance promptly. Failure to do so will result in your card remaining inactive. What? The customer service representative from the card company did mention an outstanding balance. It seems the payment for my usual credit card hasn't been processed yet. But why? Should have a significant amount saved in the account designated for automatic payments. However, upon checking my bank balance, it shows $0. The only other individual with access to withdraw funds from it would be my husband. With a sense of urgency, I reached for my mobile phone and swiftly reported to the police. I'm Garnett Felton, 30 years old, and I operate as a freelance web designer, setting my own tempo. Thanks to the flexibility of my job, I frequently meet clients face-to-face despite the option of virtual meetings. Though virtual interactions are feasible, I find that direct communication better conveys my concepts. As deadlines loom, I immerse myself in work, sacrificing sleep for productivity. My ability to sustain this pace is largely due to the unwavering support of my husband Thomas, whom I married just a year ago. A couple of years ago, when I was tasked with a project at a company, he was the liaison I dealt with. We dated for a year and a half before tying the knot. Following our wedding, he relocated to my apartment. However, a significant issue has emerged in my life revolving around Thomas's parents. They have a lax approach to finances and often find themselves strapped for cash. Thomas and I divide our living costs evenly. Given my higher income, I typically cover all expenses for the month, with him reimbursing me half at the start of the subsequent month. However, when I mentioned this month's expenses to Thomas as usual, he seemed annoyed and remarked, "Look, money's a bit tight right now. Can I settle my share of the living expenses after my next paycheck?" What do you mean by tight? I'm only asking for half of the living expenses." "Yeah, I get that, but I'm completely strapped until my next payday." "What do you mean? It's only been 10 days since you got paid." His evasiveness and reluctance to clarify started to irk me. His deliberate ambiguity prompted me to delve deeper. "Hey, can you please explain why you can't pay properly? And what's this about assisting your parents?" "Well, you see, is there something you're suspicious about?" "No, not at all. I simply assisted my mom and dad." "Assisted?" "Yeah, they mentioned they were facing some difficulties, so I sent them some money." Thomas's parents were supposed to be financially stable. My father-in-law held a full-time job, while my mother-in-law worked part-time. So, why did they suddenly require financial assistance? This question had been nagging at me, and I couldn't shake it. Why do your parents need financial support if they're both employed? This hasn't been necessary in the past. I've been assisting them for a while now. They recently requested an increase in the amount, starting this month. You didn't actually agree to increase the amount, did you? Yes, I did. Though the issue of helping one's parents in need is understandable, I couldn't help but feel unsettled by this revelation. "All right, just ensure you settle your share when you receive your paycheck at the end of the month." Agreed. My husband has a stubborn streak that's hard to break once he's made up his mind. While I adore him, his trait does lead to some challenges. I knew trying to reason further wouldn't sway him, and apologies weren't exactly his forte. So, I opted to refrain from pushing the issue and waited patiently till the next payday. Since that incident, he's been consistently finding excuses to avoid contributing to our household expenses. And when he does chip in, it's only a fraction of what's needed. It's been nearly 6 months of him refusing to pull his weight. While we're technically still married, my patience is wearing thin. Not only am I covering all the bills, but I'm also responsible for all the household chores. Reflecting on this situation left me feeling foolish and overwhelmed with a sense of emptiness. One late night, he stumbled in, his cheeks flushed from alcohol. Unable to contain my frustration, I raised my voice. "Why didn't you call if you were going to be out drinking? I made dinner and waited for you." Sorry. A colleague unexpectedly invited me out. "But couldn't you have sent a message? I've asked you before to keep me informed. It's not fair to leave me hanging. Don't start yelling the moment I walk in. It's not welcoming." "What do you mean? Why am I the one being blamed?" He shot me a look of disdain, as if I were in the wrong. His attitude infuriated me, and I confronted him. "How can you afford to go drinking when you can't even contribute to our bills?" "I can enjoy a drink occasionally. I'm exhausted from working every day." "So am I. I handle all the household chores." If you can't contribute anymore, can't we stop sending money to your parents? What? Why? That's my family's business. It's not your concern. And what about us, Thomas? Aren't we family too? What am I to you, living here with you after we got married? This is so irritating. What does it matter? You earn more than I do anyway. Why does he feel so entitled? The only reason Thomas can live comfortably is because I'm shouldering all the expenses. Would a simple thank you or sorry for the inconvenience be too much to ask? I was left speechless by his irrational arguments. I couldn't fathom his arrogance. Given our escalating tempers, I realized a rational conversation was unlikely and suggested, let's revisit this tomorrow. The following day, while preparing dinner and awaiting his return, I heard the front door creak open. Welcome home, I called out, but received no response. Then the living room door swung open, and in walked my husband with his parents. Mom, Dad, what brings you here? With a smug grin, my husband interjected, my parents have something they want to discuss with you. To discuss with me? Come on, Mom and Dad, let's get to the point. Prompted by my husband, my father-in-law began to look apologetic. Apologies for the sudden visit. We've come to talk about the financial support Thomas has been providing us. What's this about? Oh, Ernest, could you please ease up on Thomas? Surprised, I blurted out, what? I was completely bewildered. Then my mother-in-law, who had remained silent, spoke up. Garnett, Thomas has been sending us money each month, thinking of our well-being. It's unfair for you to accuse him. What are you saying? Accusations. All I'm asking for is our living expenses to be managed properly. Listen, Garnett, I hate to bring this up, but we're practically family, aren't we? If your own family were struggling, wouldn't you lend a hand? What? That's what anyone would expect, right? Your father-in-law and I have been experiencing financial strain lately, so we rely on Thomas to continue supporting us. Therefore, you should handle all the living expenses for both of you. It seemed they assumed it was only natural for me to shoulder all the costs. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I lashed out. Enough is enough. What do you think I've been doing? Managing all the household chores and covering every living expense. How is that fair? Isn't it what married couples do? Support each other, right? Or are you just that selfish? Upon hearing his mother's taunt, my husband, sitting beside me, couldn't suppress a chuckle. That evening, despite my efforts to reason, they remained obstinate. They finally departed well past 9 p.m. Once they were gone, my husband abruptly handed me signed divorce papers. In disbelief, I questioned, what's this? It means exactly what it says, he retorted. Peering down at me, he declared, if you persist in defying me, I'll end our marriage. Are you serious? Absolutely. If you don't want a divorce, then simply obey. Your role is to follow, not lead. I knew I should have stood my ground, but I felt utterly drained. Perhaps trying to reason with Thomas before the situation worsened was futile. Perhaps divorce was the only option. The decision was swift. The following day, I signed the divorce papers Thomas had given me and headed to City Hall. The documents were processed, and just like that, I was single once more. Now that I'm finally liberated, I'll soon find my own place and embrace independent living. Feeling rejuvenated, I opted to indulge myself with a shopping trip to the department store. Working predominantly from home with outings limited to client meetings, it had been quite some time since I splurged on myself, especially given the recent strain of covering all expenses. Today, however, I've decided to treat myself. With that resolve, I ventured into the women's clothing section. After trying on a couple of dresses, I settled on 2 favorites. At the checkout, as I handed over my credit card, the cashier's troubled expression caught my attention. I'm sorry, ma'am. It seems we're unable to process this card. What? That's impossible. I've used it recently to purchase a new tablet for work without any issues. Why the sudden problem now? Racing home, I dialed the card company's number. Upon explaining the situation to the operator, she delivered startling news. We require immediate payment of the outstanding balance, or your card will be rendered unusable. Outstanding balance. Indeed, last month, we were unable to debit your card usage from your account. Is this plausible? Please verify your bank account balance. After ending the call, I swiftly accessed my bank account online, the very account from which my card draws funds. Initially reserved for personal savings, it now solely serves my card transactions. If memory serves, there should be $5 million within, but the balance reads 0. Just before the card's due date, the entire $5 million had been withdrawn. What on earth was happening? A chilling suspicion gripped me. Could it have been Thomas? But who else had access? Our bank book and ATM card were stored together, only accessible to the both of us, meaning Thomas was the only other person who could have withdrawn from my account. I waited for his return, then confronted him. Hey, did you withdraw money from my account? He smirked, let out an exasperated sigh, and replied, clearly irritated. Oh, you figured it out. Thought I did a pretty good job of covering my tracks, huh? I can't believe this. Why would you do that? Why? For my parents, of course. I gave them your $5 million. What did you just say? Just as I said, they needed financial support. Fortunately, I have the means to provide it. Speechless, he began to explain, his tone tinged with pride. It appeared his parents had developed an obsession with online shopping. They were purchasing items they fancied, far exceeding their income. Initially, they turned to Thomas for assistance. However, as their spending spiraled out of control, they began to demand more. They started purchasing multiples of the same items, gifting them to neighbors. Before they knew it, their monthly expenses surpassed $500,000, a sum Thomas couldn't manage alone. So, he withdrew the $5 million from my account. After he finished explaining, he remarked, "You shouldn't complain. They're your family too. Consider it looking after them. Don't make a fuss over a mere $5 million. In that moment, I found myself dialing the police on my cell. Hello, police. I want to report a break-in and theft. My address is... Thomas watched me with wide eyes as I ended the call. He shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? Did you just call the police?" Police. Why wouldn't I? There's been a break-in and theft, right? Calling it theft is exaggerating. This is my house. I firmly reminded a flustered Thomas. We're no longer a couple. In fact, I'm the one renting this place, so technically, it's not your home, is it? We're not together anymore, remember? The divorce papers you signed yesterday, I'd already submitted them. So in other words, this is my place and you're just a stranger here, an intruder, right? You've got to be kidding me. Call them back and cancel the report. Waving my phone angrily at him, I warned, if you lay a finger on me, I'll call the cops again. Just so you know, they're already on their way. You can't escape now. Why don't you just admit what you've done? Whoa, hold on. We loved each other, didn't we? How did it come to this? Love each other? I scoffed. Don't try to feed me that nonsense. Whose fault do you think all of this is? It all began because you blindly supported your irresponsible parents. You can't just act recklessly and expect forgiveness. Who would forgive someone as despicable as you? What a fool. Fool? Do you even know who you're talking to? I'm talking to you. Like parents, like child. Because you were raised by parents who were careless with money, you think it's acceptable to deplete someone else's savings. I hope the police give you a stern lecture and you feel the weight of those $5 million. Just then, the police arrived and Thomas crumbled on the spot. Who's the suspect? Pointing at my husband, now cowering on the floor, I said, "It's him." Without a doubt. "All right, let's go. You'll need to come in for questioning," the officer commanded. All I wanted was to support my parents, but my pleas fell on deaf ears, and Thomas was escorted away by the police. However, the authorities deemed the incident a civil matter, explaining they couldn't intervene. Determined to seek justice, I sought legal assistance and demanded compensation for the misappropriation of my $5 million in savings, along with damages totaling $6 million. Naturally, Thomas and his parents couldn't afford such a sum. In the end, all three found themselves drowning in debt. Despite their financial woes, his parents continued their reckless spending habits, accruing even more debt. They eventually resorted to borrowing from loan sharks, living in constant fear of relentless debt collectors, desperately trying to remain unseen. On the contrary, I made the bold decision to sever all ties with Thomas and relocated to a new apartment. Fortunately, my career began to thrive, and my income surpassed my wildest expectations. Since parting ways with Thomas, everything in my professional life fell into place. In hindsight, I regret not divorcing him sooner. Despite the failure of my marriage, I recognized that my life was far from over. Taking lessons from this experience, I resolved to exercise greater caution in my future endeavors. My name is Kate, and I live with my husband, Michael. We now run a restaurant called Sunflower, which we got from my grandfather. He loved this restaurant a lot and had many loyal customers. Even though my grandfather was very sick with cancer, he kept working at Sunflower. He would say, I don't want to be lying in a hospital bed. I want to be at Sunflower working until my last day. Even as he got weaker, he stayed cheerful and kept serving food with a smile, enjoying chats with his regulars. My grandfather passed away today with his family around him. He made me, his granddaughter, the new owner of Sunflower. He knew his time was coming and left a clear will about who would take over the restaurant. I decided to follow my grandfather's wishes and take over Sunflower. Thankfully, after he passed away, the customers kept coming and the employees who worked with my grandfather stayed on to help us. Since I had learned to cook like my grandfather, I felt sure I could make the same great food. My grandfather had put a lot of effort into keeping the restaurant running, and the regulars were pleased that the food still tasted just like his. They would say, "It tastes just like Grandpa's. Even though he's gone, it feels like he's still here with us." They were glad to keep enjoying his cooking. I felt more motivated as Sunflower continued to do well, but my husband Michael was becoming unhappy. He said, "Restaurant owners should be men. Why did you get to inherit it?" I answered, "Because I'm his granddaughter. Even though I own the restaurant, you'll be working with me, so it shouldn't be an issue." Michael wanted to own the restaurant and often complained about it. But I am the top chef, and even when my grandfather was alive, Michael mostly did the shopping and never cooked. I thought it was unusual for a restaurant owner not to cook. I probably should have considered giving the restaurant to Michael. But my grandfather had clearly named me as the heir. I felt it was important to honor his wishes and respect his will. When a customer would ask, "Kate, can I have another one of these?" I'd reply, "Sure, coming right up." The restaurant was doing well, and we were very busy every day. Then, one day, someone came to visit. "Hey, Michael, it's been a long time." It was Michael's younger brother, Dave. Dave had moved far away last year for a job, but he quit and came back. I don't get along with him because he never had a steady job and seems to just mess around. I greeted him with, "Oh hey, welcome back," even though he's a terrible brother-in-law. Still, he's an important brother to Michael, so Michael was glad to see him. Dave said, "I heard your grandfather passed away. Michael, did you inherit the restaurant?" "No, I didn't," Michael answered. "What? Did your wife get it?" "No way, she's a woman. It's ridiculous that she's the owner." Dave laughed, not noticing the annoyed looks from the customers. I didn't want to deal with my unpleasant brother-in-law, so I just ignored him. Dave then asked, "Since I'm family, can I get a free meal?" "Yeah, sure," Michael said. Dave ordered a big meal, drank beer, and left without paying. He was really inconsiderate. I told Michael, even when other family members come here, they always pay. It's not fair to let Dave get a free meal, so he should pay if he's going to eat here. Michael replied, "It's okay, he doesn't have any money. We should help him out a bit." It felt like he was taking Dave's side. After that, Dave kept coming to the restaurant regularly and never paid. Each time he came, I'd ask Michael to make Dave pay, but Michael ignored me. My insistence on having Dave pay made Michael annoyed, and we started having problems. Meanwhile, Dave kept coming to the restaurant more often, and Michael and I grew more distant. Whenever Dave visited, he and Michael would go to the kitchen to talk privately. I suspected they were talking about me, but I acted like I didn't care and kept working. Dave would glance at me while chatting with Michael. One day, Dave asked, "Is there any way you could own the restaurant?" Michael replied, "My wife is the owner." Dave said, "The restaurant's location is great and there are many customers. Why don't you take over and keep all the profits? It must be tough having your wife as your boss, right?" Michael admitted, "Well, yeah." Dave wanted to take over Sunflower and was plotting with Michael to make it happen. While Michael and I weren't getting along, Dave was trying to get Michael on his side. Michael asked, "But how could we take over the restaurant?" Dave said, "I have an idea." Michael and Dave started making plans in secret. Michael agreed to Dave's idea and decided to go ahead with it. The next day was supposed to be the restaurant's closing day. Michael left early and I was left alone. Even though it was my day off, I remembered the kitchen needed cleaning. I went to the restaurant to clean, but when I arrived, I found the door was already open. I thought I had forgotten to lock it the night before. I went inside and saw Michael and Dave there. I asked, surprised, "You're here?" Michael smirked and said, "The door was open." I replied, "But today is a closed day. Why are you here?" They both had smirks on their faces as if they were plotting something. Michael then said, "I need to talk to you." Since you inherited this restaurant, I don't like how you've been acting all high and mighty. I wasn't acting that way, I replied. Yes, you have been, Michael insisted. Don't you agree? Dave chimed in, yes, you are acting that way. You're feeling great because the restaurant is doing well and making money. I was getting more annoyed and angry. They were talking to me like I was stupid. While I was fuming, Michael started laying out documents on the table. I don't like your attitude. I can't take it anymore. Let's get a divorce, he said. The documents were already filled out divorce papers. I was stunned by how sudden it all was. What do you mean by this? I asked, feeling upset and confused. The first thing I thought about was what would happen to the restaurant. I only have a few employees, and running it alone after a divorce would be really hard. This was all too sudden for me to handle. It will be tough for me to keep running the restaurant if we get a divorce, I said. Michael responded, We'll buy the restaurant from you. I'll become the owner, and you just need to leave. I couldn't understand what Michael was saying. He continued, It's a waste because this restaurant has a great location and lots of customers, but it has a boring menu. We plan to revamp it. Yes, so just sign the divorce papers and leave. Their words didn't make sense to me, and I was in shock. This is the restaurant my grandfather ran for years. We're making a good profit. We should keep it as it is for our customers. Michael said, That means you won't change or improve the restaurant and it will go out of business soon. We don't want that, so I'll run it for you. No matter what I said, Michael didn't listen. I was convinced that Dave had influenced him. All right, I'll buy the restaurant for your asking price. I'll make the money soon enough, so I don't care about the amount, Michael said. I couldn't tolerate their arrogance any longer. Fine. I'll sell it for $500,000. Just give me 2 weeks to prepare the divorce papers and a contract. Don't come to the restaurant during those 2 weeks. They were thrilled that I agreed to sell. They didn't realize that I was giving in so easily because of their selfishness, only thinking about their own gain. I managed to run the restaurant by myself until it was time to hand it over. A customer asked, Hey, where's your husband? I replied, We're actually getting a divorce. Why so sudden? Are you going to run Sunflower all by yourself? No, my husband is buying the restaurant. I'll be leaving in 2 weeks. The customers were shocked and looked worried. But I had good news for them. I handed out a flyer I had recently made. When they saw it, they looked relieved. 2 weeks later, I brought my husband and brother-in-law the contract to sell the restaurant and the completed divorce papers. Now you have nothing to complain about, I said. Michael signed the contract right away. $500,000. I'm transferring the money to your account now, so this is officially my restaurant. Michael and Dave were thrilled. While they celebrated, I packed up my things and left the restaurant. As I went to submit the divorce papers, I was eager to see how they would handle the restaurant. Michael and Dave quickly reopened the restaurant. I've already informed the employees about the situation, so running the restaurant without Kate should be fine, Michael said. All right, let's start making some money, Dave added. They were excited and ready to go. However, when the restaurant opened at 10 a.m., something unexpected happened. Why aren't the customers coming? Michael wondered. Normally, customers arrived right when the restaurant opened, but today no one showed up. The loyal employees were also missing. Michael tried calling them but couldn't reach anyone. Since this was unusual, Michael and Dave started to panic. When Michael went outside, he saw a regular customer walking by. Aren't you one of our regulars? Michael asked. Yeah, that's me, the customer replied. I was worried because you didn't come in when we opened. Please come in, Michael said. But I heard your wife quit, the customer said. I used to come here for her cooking. If she's not here, I don't have a reason to eat here anymore. Don't say that. Don't worry, we'll make you a delicious meal, Michael insisted, trying to push the customer into the restaurant. The customer reluctantly went inside and looked at the new menu. What's with this menu? The customer asked. Since I'm the new owner, I've updated all the menus, Michael explained. The menu was completely different from what was originally offered at Sunflower. It featured exotic dishes with names that were hard for customers to understand, which made them less eager to order. Okay, I'll have the steak, the customer decided. Coming right up, Michael said. Michael and Dave started cooking with enthusiasm. Since the customer had never seen Michael cook before, they weren't expecting much. Why is it taking so long? The customer asked after a while. Here you go, Michael said, finally bringing out the steak after a 40-minute wait. The customer's eyes widened when they saw the steak. "What is this?" the customer exclaimed. What Michael served wasn't really cooking. There were only 3 slices of meat in the center of the plate. The meat was burnt on the outside and raw inside, with no sauce or side dishes, just bread and soup. The meat is high quality. The seasoning is just salt and pepper. The meat is prepared this way so you can enjoy its natural flavor and tenderness, Michael said. The steak looked so unappealing that the customer couldn't even bring themselves to use the cutlery. Even the soup seemed very cheap. I'm not eating this," the customer said, offended, and tried to leave. Michael was shocked that the customer didn't even try the food. "Hey, you still need to pay for this. It's $30. $30? Are you kidding me? I'm not paying for this piece of underscore. The customer said angrily before storming out. Michael and Dave were left in shock. They were starting to realize the mistakes they had made. Michael had never cooked before, and Dave had never held a proper job. They were clearly not ready to run a restaurant. This should have been obvious, but they were so focused on making a profit that they missed it. After the new owners took over, Sunflower never saw another customer. Meanwhile, I started a new restaurant called Sunflower Second at a different location. The original employees joined me. This new restaurant was also inherited from my grandfather. My grandfather had been worried about the old Sunflower building, so he built a new restaurant at a different site. He intended to tell people about it once it was finished, but he passed away before it was completed. I inherited this new restaurant as well. I never told Michael about it. 2 weeks before selling Sunflower, I advertised the new restaurant to our regulars. They followed me to the new place because they wanted to enjoy my cooking again. Thanks to their support, the new restaurant was busy from day one. We were able to hire new employees, and the $500,000 from selling the original Sunflower helped me give everyone a raise. At the new restaurant, I kept the original Sunflower menu but also added my own unique dishes. I aimed to attract younger customers and families by creating menus that appealed to children as well. This strategy worked well, and more families started coming to the restaurant. We grew by keeping the beloved original dishes while offering new options for younger diners. I felt fulfilled and busy every day. Meanwhile, Michael and Dave were struggling. They had borrowed money to pay me the $500,000 and were now receiving reminders about their debts. "What are we going to do about this?" Michael asked. "You're the one who started this mess. You should fix it," Dave said, sounding desperate. Dave, not expecting things to turn out this way, didn't know what to do. Then he came up with an idea. "I have a good plan," he said. They showed up at my new restaurant unexpectedly during the lunch rush with their good plan. "Help us, Kate," Dave shouted loudly, ignoring the many customers who were eating. Michael, with an injured arm, added, "I can't cook anymore. We want to return the restaurant to you, so could you just give us back the money we paid for it? The original Sunflower is now your restaurant. You signed the contract. You need to take responsibility and work hard," I replied. I didn't take Dave's plea seriously and tried to get back to my work. Then my ex-husband entered the restaurant, clearly in pain. "Kate, help me," he cried out. As Michael made a scene, I tried to ignore him and returned to the kitchen, despite the murmurs from the customers. "Wow, that looks really painful. Is he okay?" they whispered. Hearing the concern from the customers, I looked at Michael and was shocked. His arm had a huge bruise. "Wait, you're really injured?" I asked. "Yes, that's what I was trying to tell you," Michael said. "Then you need to go to the hospital right away," I insisted. I quickly called a cab and sent Michael to the hospital. During my lunch break, I went to check on him. When Michael came out of the hospital, he seemed to have just finished his examination. When I tried to ask him what had happened, he and Dave turned away from me and ran off. Feeling uneasy, I approached the hospital reception. "I think a man named Michael was seen here for an examination a few minutes ago. Has it been completed? I'm here to pick him up." "Let me check that for you," the receptionist said. I tried to find out why Michael was injured using his name at the hospital, but the receptionist looked confused. "Sorry, there's no record of a man named Michael visiting for a checkup. Maybe he went to another hospital," she said. Michael had never had a checkup before. Realizing they were trying to hide something, I quickly went after them. After driving for a few minutes, I spotted Michael and Dave walking. I stopped my car and grabbed Michael's arm. "I knew it," I said. I looked at his arm and noticed the bruise was gone. Michael and Dave tried to run, but I held on firmly. Seeing my angry face, they stopped trying to escape. "Why is the bruise gone? You're not really injured, are you?" I asked. Michael sighed and admitted, "I didn't realize running a restaurant would be this hard. No customers are coming to the original Sunflower, so we're not making any money and can't pay off our debt. I pretended to be injured to avoid working, hoping you'd give us back the money." "Wow, I can't believe this. I can't believe you tried to deceive me with such a childish lie," I said. I released his arm. "From now on, stay out of my life. That restaurant is yours to deal with." With that, I got back in my car and drove away, feeling disappointed as I glanced at them in the rearview mirror. Michael and Dave quickly put Sunflower up for sale. They likely hoped to sell it to pay off their debts, but the building was quite old, making it hard to find a buyer. They worked around the clock, struggling with mounting debt reminders. They got what they deserved because they let greed and selfishness lead them away from what truly mattered. Meanwhile, my new restaurant is thriving more than ever, and our profits have doubled. A longtime regular customer asked to be trained by me, so now I have an apprentice. To ensure they don't become like Michael, I teach them that running a restaurant is hard work and requires dedication. I'm committed to working hard to keep my grandfather's legacy alive for many years to come. I have been married for 3 years to a kind husband. We were very close, but we didn't have any children yet. We were both looking forward to the day we would have kids until the accident happened. Please listen to this unbelievable story. My husband was kind to everyone, not just me. My parents loved him too. I have a sister who is very focused on her career, and my husband got along with her as well. Suddenly, my husband's work got really busy. He started coming home late and even working on his days off. He was put in charge of a team and was always on his phone, talking to his team members. Looking back, people might have thought, "Isn't that suspicious?" But I didn't suspect anything. I just worried about his health. Then my sister, who lived alone, got a new job and needed to move. She wanted to buy new furniture, so I planned to take her shopping in my car. On the day we planned to go shopping, which was a Saturday, I got called into work by my boss. This was the only day off for my sister. As I thought about what to do, I realized that my husband also had the day off. My husband had been busy with work lately, but I decided to ask him to take my place. Seeing the trouble I was in, he agreed and said, "It's a bit awkward to go out with your sister alone, but it's fine. My car is being repaired, so can I borrow yours?" I was grateful for his help and went to my office to deal with the problem there. It was the first time my husband and my sister went out alone together. I wondered if they were doing well and if they had found the right furniture. When I finished handling the issue at work, it was already dark. I took out my cell phone to call my husband and sister for dinner. That's when I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, am I speaking to John's family member?" a stranger asked. "Yes, I'm his wife," I replied. "This is the police. Your husband has been in an accident." The man who identified himself as a police officer informed me. He told me that the car my husband was driving had been in an accident and that both he and his female passenger were unconscious. I don't remember exactly what I did when I heard the news, but I rushed to the hospital. At the emergency reception, I gave them my name and was taken to the ICU. Through the glass window, I could see my husband connected to various tubes and wrapped in bandages. I was very worried about what would happen to him. My mother, who lived far away, arrived later, and we spent a worried night together. During this time, the police told us more about the accident. They said John had been driving on a road with clear visibility when a car ran a red light and hit him. The other driver was seriously injured and was also being treated at the same hospital. However, the driver said that John's car had been moving strangely before the accident. The police were investigating whether my husband had fallen asleep at the wheel. Within a few days, my husband and sister regained consciousness, and the doctors did some tests. My mother and I were called in to hear the results. The doctors told us that although they would survive, they would likely have some kind of disability. Despite this, my mother and I were happy they were alive and hoped they would improve with rehabilitation. We didn't tell them about the possible disabilities. My mother and I only shared positive news and took care of them. My mother looked after my sister, and I took care of my husband. At first, my husband was in shock from the accident and was feeling unwell. He was also worried about the trouble he had caused for me, my mother, and my sister. But as time went by, my husband, who had always been kind to me, started to change. He became frustrated with his leg that didn't move easily, the hospital treatment, and the fact that he had to quit his job. All of this seemed to make him very irritable. Even though he couldn't control his frustration, I still went to the hospital every day because I understood how he felt and wanted to support him. One day, a police detective visited me at the hospital. He explained that they had discovered something about the accident. It appeared that there had been a brake oil leak in my car, which was involved in the crash. This issue could have led to an accident at any time, possibly explaining why the car behaved strangely before the crash. The woman who collided with us was also in bad condition. Her mother came to apologize, and it was the first time I met her. After this, I noticed my husband's outburst towards me increased. He resented my ability to move freely while he was immobile. He also seemed irritated when I could only visit briefly due to my work commitments. He began giving me orders and directing his frustrations at me if I didn't meet his expectations. He threw things and complained about his hospital room, even objecting when I went out to get my own lunch. His demands became more unreasonable over time. I sympathized with his situation, but I had to work to support us financially and handle numerous responsibilities like liaising with the police and managing hospital communications. I barely had time to catch my breath. My husband's behavior became increasingly intolerable, and I felt trapped. My sister seemed to be struggling similarly, and my mother grew more exhausted by the day. I heard that my sister's demands on our mother, who wasn't employed, were becoming overwhelming as well. When I couldn't make it to the hospital, both my husband and sister seemed to have learned about the possibility of remaining paralyzed despite rehabilitation. Then there was the revelation about my car's brake oil leak. My sister said, "Hey, I heard your car was leaking oil. You were responsible for maintaining it. Now I can't work or recover properly because of this. Mom seems upset, and your husband is in the same situation. You're now responsible for caring for both of us for the rest of your life." My sister's accusations caught me off guard. I called my mother, who explained that my sister had been struggling mentally for a while. She also mentioned being too tired to go to the hospital. Despite this, I remained worried about my husband and went to see him at the hospital. When I didn't find him in his room, I discovered him with my sister in the common area. Visiting hours were almost over, and they were sitting together alone in the otherwise empty room. "Hey, I heard that if you had just taken the car in for inspection, none of this would have happened," my husband said, glaring at me. "Yeah, but you're the reason why your sister and I are in this mess," he continued. "The insurance will cover it, and now you're stuck taking care of us for the rest of our lives. Don't forget that." His words hit me hard, and something inside me snapped. "Since when did you two get so close?" I asked sharply. "What do you mean?" he replied defensively. "You don't visit that often, and your mom texted your sister to come over since we can't leave here, and we can't walk. What's wrong with me talking to your sister?" It felt like my husband and sister were teaming up against me. "Sure," I retorted sarcastically. "You guys hadn't seen each other for ages before the accident, right?" "What are you talking about? I'm talking about you taking care of us." "You know that," my husband said, brushing off my question. My sister didn't even look at me but nodded along when my husband said that I would be caring for them both for the rest of their lives. I didn't expect a response, but I continued speaking, hoping they might understand my feelings. "I wonder if the person who hit your car is recovering now," I said. "How should I know? She crashed into us when the light was red. It's just unbelievable," my husband replied. "Yeah, it was terrifying. We definitely need to make sure we get compensation from her. And this happened right when I was about to get a promotion," my sister chimed in. If I didn't interrupt, they would just keep complaining, so I decided it was time to tell the truth. "There's something you both need to know," I began. "What is it?" my husband asked. "Firstly, I did have my car inspected before the accident," I revealed. "Did you? Then the dealership should be held accountable. They must have known about the brake oil leak," he responded. "I agree. So right after the accident, the police contacted me. They wanted to determine the cause and asked to check my dashcam footage. But that old dashcam doesn't record audio, and it only starts recording after an accident, so it wouldn't show anything useful," he argued. "I understand your concern. However, you weren't aware that I had recently installed a new dashcam," I disclosed. My sister looked up in surprise. "What? she exclaimed. As the truth unfolded, my sister's face turned ashen. I also installed an interior camera, I continued calmly. Modern dashcams can start recording with even a slight jolt. The police have already reviewed the footage. My husband appeared bewildered, and my sister looked on the verge of collapsing. You were hiding something, weren't you? I confronted her directly. I don't understand, she stammered. You tampered with the car. My husband started to panic. How can you accuse my sister like that? You're talking to her as if she's your enemy. Suddenly, he fell silent, clearly shaken. I mentioned earlier that even a slight movement would trigger the recording. So many private moments between you two were captured. I was mortified when the police asked if it was my sister who was in the car with me. My husband turned pale. You've been having an affair all this time. I trusted you completely. Caught in the middle, my husband began to shift blame onto my sister. Mary isn't the only one responsible here. At that moment, the mother of the woman who had crashed into my car arrived at the hospital room. I had invited her to come over. Don't you have something to say to her? I asked pointedly. My sister was caught off guard by the presence of the small, tearful woman. Wait, who's this? She asked, bewildered. She's the mother of the woman who crashed into us. She should be taking responsibility for all of this, I clarified. My husband, who had been speaking, fell silent upon seeing the woman's tears. She's the mother of the woman who crashed into us. Her name is Alice, I added, hearing the woman's name. My husband turned pale, and my sister began to panic. What? Who is she? Do you know the woman who was driving? So they knew it was your car, and she crashed into it? My husband asked, clearly taken aback. Seeing my husband struggling, I decided to explain the situation to my sister. She was having an affair with John. He had promised her a divorce, but he didn't follow through. When Alice claimed she was pregnant with his child, John insisted she get an abortion. After that, he cut off contact with her, and she wanted revenge by hurting me. Wait, so that means, my sister began to piece it together. Yes, you were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, I confirmed. I can't believe this has ruined everything, my sister lamented. The truth is, crying or shouting won't change anything now, I said, pouring out my emotions. Now you both understand what happened. You had an affair behind my back, and Mary tried to harm me by tampering with the brake oil in my car. But she ended up in an accident herself. I'm the victim in all of this. I continued, I was willing to work things out and not divorce you if you showed remorse and came clean during your hospital stay. But you never indicated you were sorry. Instead, you treated me horribly. Remember how we drew up our divorce papers shortly after we got married? I never thought we'd use them, but I filed them today, so we're no longer married. Goodbye. Having said everything I needed to say, I left the dark and quiet hospital feeling a sense of liberation from the resentment that had been bottled up inside me. However, my mother was deeply shocked when she learned the truth. She not only grappled with my sister's infidelity, but also with the responsibility of caring for her physically disabled daughter alone. I ended all ties with John and Mary, but I couldn't abandon my mother to handle everything on her own. I reached out to the woman responsible for the accident, apologized, and arranged compensation for my sister, who was innocently involved. This eased my mother's burden. 2 years have passed since then. I am divorced from John and living independently. My close relationship with him had made our divorce surprising news for my colleagues. Subsequently, I noticed more men approaching me, perhaps because divorced women seemed appealing to them at that time. Despite this, thoughts of my ex-husband lingered, making it hard for me to consider dating again. Instead, I focused on advancing my career by studying for a certification exam and enrolling in an online business school after work. When I was married, I had never imagined pursuing such goals. Unlike my sister, who was dedicated to her career, I had never envied that path. Yet here I was naturally drawn to it. Life, I reflected, is unpredictable. Since then, my ex-husband moved back to his parents' house where he's facing criticism from his relatives for his behavior towards me. His mental state has deteriorated, and there have been reports of violent outbursts causing trouble for those around him. Meanwhile, my sister also returned home but struggled with mental illness, displaying self-centered behavior. My mother, exhausted from everything, used my sister's savings and accident compensation to place her in a care facility. She consulted me beforehand and I supported her decision. If I hadn't taken action back then, I might have been trapped in a life of servitude to both of them forever. It's something I never foresaw. I passed my certification exam as planned and was transferred to a department where my skills are put to good use. I developed a close relationship with a teacher from my online business school, and soon will be married. He's not just kind to everyone but incredibly caring towards me. When I come home late, he prepares dinner for us, a gesture that brings me immense happiness. As I shared these thoughts with the stars, I hurried home to the partner who awaited me.
My mother-in-law threw out my things because she didn't want a daughter-in-law who planned to give birth at her parents' house. She dragged me out of the house while I was still in my pajamas, not even letting me put on my shoes. All I had was my phone, so I called my mom, who luckily was nearby. I waited for her at a local diner. When my mom and sister heard what happened, they were furious. They made a call that marked the start of trouble for my mother-in-law and husband. My name is Katie, and I'm 28 years old. I married Sam, who is 30 a year ago. His father runs a big company, and Sam is being groomed to be the next CEO. Right now he's training at one of their smaller companies. I met Sam at work, but I didn't know about his family's business until shortly before we got married. He hadn't told me that he was going to be the next CEO until then. I was completely surprised when Sam told me he was going to be the CEO of the main company. At first I couldn't believe it because he seemed so capable and well-liked. But after he explained, it all made sense, and suddenly I was the wife of a future CEO. After we got married, Sam moved to the main company's office, while I continued working at my job. My father-in-law told me, "I've heard you're a young leader at your workplace. Keep up the good work," Sam said. However, my mother-in-law had a different view. "Why would a wife neglect her home to work?" she asked, strongly opposed to me having a job. I thought there wouldn't be any issues since we weren't living together, but I was mistaken. Sam's parents wanted us to live with them. It started when my father-in-law said, "I'm very busy. It would be nice to have someone take care of us." Sam also agreed with the idea of living together. "I'm concerned about Mom too. I've grown up in this house, and moving now would be inconvenient," he explained. I had almost no chance to oppose living together. When they asked my opinion, my mother-in-law said, "Since everyone seems to think it's a good idea, Katie, do you have any objections?" At that point, I had no choice but to agree to live with my in-laws. Unexpectedly, once we moved in together, my mother-in-law, who had opposed my job, started making life difficult for me, pushing me to quit. She dumped all the household chores on me, even though I was working. If she wasn't satisfied with how I did things, she'd make me redo them. At first, she complained about small things like a speck of dust or a stray hair. I tried to learn from her feedback and clean those spots better. Then she started checking unusual places like behind the TV or between dressers for dust, places that aren't typically cleaned regularly. I thought, these aren't part of normal cleaning routines. So I finally spoke up. "I can't clean these spots every day. I work just like Sam does. I'll do a thorough cleaning on weekends, so there's no need to redo everything today, right?" My mother-in-law got angry and snapped back. "How dare you talk back to me like that? Times have changed. It's unheard of for a daughter-in-law to be so bold." In her anger, she called for Sam. "Sam," Katie yelled at me. I had gently pointed out areas she missed while cleaning, thinking it was for her benefit. But she portrayed herself as the victim, shedding fake tears to Sam. I hoped Sam would understand and support me. "Mom, Katie is working too. Maybe you could go easy on her," I thought. But reality was different. "Why did you upset Mom like that? She was only trying to help. Why are you getting upset?" Sam scolded me. In the end, Sam sided with his mother. That's when I realized the only person I could rely on in that house was my father-in-law. But he was rarely around due to his busy schedule. I had to fend for myself. That's how it went. After that, I stopped confronting my mother-in-law. It didn't matter what I said. She would always tell Sam, and I would end up feeling down. It seemed better just to quietly listen to her. That's the approach I started to take, knowing Sam wouldn't support me. It was the only way to have some peace in that house. I lived like this for a year, but then I started feeling unwell and decided to see a doctor. It turned out I wasn't just sick, I was pregnant. I wondered how my in-laws would react to the news. With a glimmer of hope, I first told my husband. "You know how I've been feeling off lately. I went to the doctor, and guess what? I'm pregnant," I said. "Wow, that's great. So I'm going to be a dad, huh? Can't wait. Do we know the gender yet?" Sam exclaimed. "Not yet. Does it matter to you?" I asked. "Of course it does. It has to be a boy," Sam replied. As I suspected, Sam was his parents' only child. I had a feeling that having a boy might be important for someone to take over the family business. What if it turns out to be a girl? I started to worry about how the baby's gender might be received. "Don't worry, I'm sure it's a boy," Sam reassured me. But I wasn't so confident. We decided to tell his parents only after finding out the gender. Eventually, we learned it was a girl. I was thrilled, though I had no intention of discriminating based on gender. Sam, however, reacted differently. "What? A girl? Are you sure? Get it checked again," he said. Seeing Sam's disappointment made me anxious about how my mother-in-law would react. I dreaded telling her. Despite Sam's initial reaction, we couldn't avoid sharing the news with our in-laws. Eventually, I persuaded Sam to break the news to his parents. "Well, I'm pregnant," he announced. "That's wonderful, Katie. We're finally going to have our first grandchild," my father-in-law exclaimed happily. My mother-in-law, however, asked right away, "So, what's the gender?" With hesitation, I replied, "It's a girl." "A girl, huh? I hope she's as lovely as you, Katie," my father-in-law responded warmly, seemingly unconcerned about the gender. But my mother-in-law couldn't hide her disappointment. "A girl? Not a boy? It has to be a boy for it to make sense for Sam," she muttered. I was shocked to hear her say that, but my father-in-law quickly intervened. "Honey, why would you say that? Whether it's a boy or a girl, they're still our grandchild. Can't you just be happy?" After my father-in-law scolded her, my mother-in-law seemed a bit down, but I knew it wouldn't last long. Sure enough, as soon as he left for work, she confronted me. "Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off on the housework. You're not planning to quit your job, are you? If not, keep up with your chores. Pregnancy isn't an illness, you know." Hearing pregnancy isn't an illness from another woman, especially one who had given birth herself, surprised me. It made me question if staying here was the right choice for having my child. My family's home is about a 3-hour train ride away. My dad passed away early, and now my mom and older sister live there together. Maybe if I explained everything to them, they might let me stay with them. I started to feel that giving birth at my in-laws' place might not be the safest option, and remembered my family's home could be a better choice. I decided to contact my mom right away. "Mom, it's me, Katie. What's up? It's rare for you to call. I'm pregnant and I was wondering if I could come home to give birth." "You're pregnant? You should have told us earlier. Congratulations. Come home for the delivery, of course, that's fine. But have you gotten permission from your in-laws?" "Well, not yet. If you discuss it properly and they agree, I don't mind at all." Mom advised me to discuss it with my in-laws. For the safety of my baby, I decided to go home for the delivery. When I talked to my husband about it, he casually said, "Going home for the birth? Oh, I guess that's fine. My mom's here too, so things should be okay around the house." He agreed quickly. Anticipating possible opposition from my mother-in-law, I decided to talk to my father-in-law. After careful consideration, I thought it would be better for everyone if I went home for the delivery. "Would that be all right?" I asked. Initially, he looked surprised, but then said, "If that's what you want, Katie, then it's probably best. I won't oppose. Could you possibly talk to my mother-in-law on my behalf?" I asked. "Well, I'll tell her," he replied, seemingly agreeing to my request. With his support, I got permission to go home for the delivery without any problems. On the day I was supposed to leave, I woke up to find that my packed luggage was missing. Unfortunately, both my husband and father-in-law had already left for work. "Do you know where my luggage is?" I hesitated to ask my mother-in-law, but I had no other option. "Oh, that luggage. I got rid of it all. I don't need a daughter-in-law who causes so much trouble. Don't ever come back," she shouted at me as she pushed me out the front door. I hadn't even had time to put on my shoes. All I had was my smartphone. I was practically in my pajamas, and with a loud click, the front door locked behind me. This meant my mother-in-law was serious. She really wanted me out, that much was clear. I felt like if I stayed there, that door would never open for me again. With that thought, I started walking. But it was the peak of summer, and walking barefoot outside was unbearable, so I sought refuge in a nearby diner. Using my phone, the only possession I had, I called my mom. She was furious and promised to be there within an hour. Luckily, she wasn't far away. I spent that hour at the diner, waiting anxiously. When my mom arrived, she wasted no time and drove me straight back to our family home. My sister was already there waiting for us. I poured out everything about my mother-in-law's actions and my husband's indifference. After hearing my story, my mom and sister exchanged some words quietly, leaving me unsure of what they were discussing. The next morning, being at my family home was a breath of fresh air. I was asked to fetch the newspaper, and when I opened the door, I found my mother-in-law and husband kneeling outside. "Katie, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. Please don't sever ties with my husband's company," my mother-in-law pleaded. "Katie, I'm sorry too. Please, can we continue doing business with my dad's company?" my husband added. Confused, I had no idea what they were talking about. Then suddenly, my mom and sister appeared from behind. "What on earth are you two doing causing a scene this early?" My mom's voice was stern. "What does resuming business mean? To avoid any further disturbance, my mom invited them inside our home. Once settled, my husband started explaining. Would you please consider doing business again with my dad's company? My mom and sister manage the company my dad left behind. Curious, I asked my mom, what does it mean that they're doing business with my father-in-law's company? Yes, they work with one of their subsidiary companies, my mom replied. Exactly. It's a major company within their group, second only to the main office, and their top client is Katie's mom's company, my husband added. I had no idea. Apparently my husband was misinformed. This was news to me too. LOL. Come to think of it, I remember my mother and father-in-law mentioning something about always being indebted to each other when they first met. I recalled. I cannot continue doing business with a family that would send my daughter out in such a state with just her phone. I'm stopping our business dealings, my mom declared firmly. My mother-in-law looked visibly shaken and pleaded, please, I beg you. I'll do anything. Could you reconsider stopping the dealings with my husband's company? At that moment, my sister chimed in with a smirk. You said you'd do anything, right? So you'll agree to Katie's divorce and naturally you'll pay alimony and child support, right? I silently thought, bringing up my divorce now, well played. Actually, before contacting my mom yesterday, I had spoken to my husband. His response was, it's what you deserve, isn't it? I found myself agreeing with my mom's decision. I no longer had any remaining affection for him. I would have brought up divorce anyway if my sister hadn't. But thanks to her timing, the conversation seemed to be turning in our favor. My mother-in-law then asked reluctantly, yes, even if it means agreeing to a divorce, will you resume business with my husband's company? With a confident smirk, my mom took out her phone and began speaking into it. It seems this lady here agrees to my daughter's divorce. From the speaker, my father-in-law's voice echoed, got it. Hey, is Jenna there? Jenna, I'm divorcing you, and Sam, you're fired. Those were the conditions set for resuming business. Additionally, my mom declared, I cannot forgive the two of you for how you treated Katie. You both deserve to be punished. As a result of my father-in-law's decision, my mother-in-law lost her husband, and my husband lost his job, income, and family support. The story continued with a challenging divorce between my in-laws, which eventually went through, reportedly settled by a top-notch lawyer from my father-in-law's side. During the divorce proceedings, assets were divided and my mother-in-law ended up paying a significant sum in compensation to my husband and me. I too went through with the divorce. Living harmoniously with a husband who only followed his mother's wishes was no longer an option for me. I received compensation for the pain caused by my mother-in-law and husband, along with child support for our unborn child. They paid a significant amount from their savings but had to take on debt. With my father-in-law and mom's influence, my husband struggled to find a new job and eventually had to switch careers. He quickly moved into customer service but underestimated the role and faced numerous complaints, leading to his swift termination. Now he's living with his mom and barely scraping by with daily wage jobs. My mother-in-law and husband, once accustomed to a lavish lifestyle thanks to my father-in-law, now reside in a small one-bedroom apartment. Their once close relationship has soured, and they argue frequently. As for my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband, I wonder if there's any hope or joy left in their lives. Meanwhile, I safely gave birth at home to a healthy baby girl. With the support of my mom and sister, I plan to focus on raising her. Once things settle down, I'm thinking of working at my mom's company. I did inform my ex-husband about our daughter's birth, but there hasn't been any follow-up from him. It seems he doesn't care much. All I expect from him is to ensure he pays child support. I have no intention of letting him see our daughter for the rest of her life. From now on, my focus is moving forward and living a fulfilling life with my daughter, supported by those around us.
The text came at 3 a.m. Sarah, I messed up. Really bad. Need to talk ASAP. I stared at my phone, already knowing what my brother had done. The crypto market had crashed overnight, wiping out billions in digital assets. And knowing Mike, he hadn't just lost his own money, he'd lost our parents' entire retirement fund. My name is Sarah Anderson, and at 32, I was about to deal with the fallout of my younger brother's biggest mistake yet. The next morning, Mike showed up at my apartment looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfectly styled hair was a mess, and his designer clothes were wrinkled. A far cry from the cocky crypto millionaire he proclaimed himself to be at Thanksgiving. How bad? I asked, letting him in. He collapsed onto my couch, running his hands through his hair. Everything. The whole investment, gone. $2.4 million, just vanished. I sat down slowly, the magnitude of what he'd done sinking in. Mom and Dad's entire retirement fund. He nodded miserably. The market crashed. The exchange went bankrupt. But there's still a chance. if we can access the private wallet where I transferred some of the coins. Some? I interrupted. How much? About half. But I lost the recovery phrase, and without it, he trailed off, looking at me hopefully. You're good with this tech stuff, right? Maybe you could help me figure out how to get it back. I almost laughed. Mike had always dismissed my work in cybersecurity as boring tech stuff, preferring to trust cryptocurrency influencers and get-rich-quick schemes. Now he wanted my help. Let me get this straight, I said, keeping my voice level. You took our parents' retirement savings, money they spent 40 years building, and put it into crypto without their knowledge. I was trying to help them, he protested. Their traditional investments were too slow. Crypto was supposed to multiply their money. I stood up and walked to my kitchen, needing a moment to control my anger. Through the window, I could see the small cafe where Mom and Dad used to take us for Sunday brunch. They'd worked their whole lives to build that retirement fund. Dad as a high school teacher, Mom as a nurse. 40 years of careful saving, gone because my brother thought he knew better. They don't know yet, do they? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mike shook his head. I was waiting for the market to recover. It always recovers, right? Not this time, I said, turning back to face him. The exchange you used is bankrupt, Mike. It's over. He jumped up, pacing my small living room. But the private wallet? If we can just recover those coins. I watched him, an idea forming in my mind. 2 weeks ago, when I first suspected Mike was in over his head, I'd done some digging. I found his wallet addresses, traced his transactions, and yes, I found the recovery phrase he thought he'd lost. But Mike didn't need to know that. Not yet. What exactly did you do with the recovery phrase? I asked. I wrote it down. I know I did. It was on a piece of paper in my apartment, but I can't find it anywhere. He ran his hands through his hair again, making it stand up even more. Sarah, please, you have to help me fix this. I thought about our parents, how Dad had put off retiring for 5 extra years to build their nest egg, how Mom still picked up extra shifts at the hospital even though her arthritis made it painful to stand for long periods. Okay, I said finally. I'll help. But we do this my way. Mike's face lit up. Really? You can recover the wallet? Maybe. But first, you need to tell Mom and Dad the truth. His expression fell. I can't? It'll kill them. They need to know, Mike, and it needs to come from you. He sank back onto the couch, looking smaller somehow. Will you come with me? I nodded, already planning the next steps in my head. We'll go tonight, but remember, this is just the beginning. If you want my help recovering those coins, you're going to have to do exactly what I say. That evening, we drove to our parents' house in silence. The modest 2-story home where we'd grown up looked exactly the same. Mom's flower garden blooming despite the early spring chill, Dad's old Volvo in the driveway. Mike's hands were shaking as we walked up to the door. I could have told him then that I had the recovery phrase, that half their money might still be recoverable. But he needed to face this moment, needed to see exactly what his reckless actions had done to the people who trusted him. Mom answered the door, her face lighting up when she saw us. What a surprise. Come in, come in. I just made coffee. Dad was in his usual spot in the living room, grading papers at his desk. Even after retiring, he still substituted at the high school a few days a week. To stay sharp, he said, though we knew it was also to help build their savings. Their savings. The thought made my stomach turn. Mom, Dad. Mike started, his voice cracking. I need to tell you something. They sat together on the couch, concern growing on their faces as Mike struggled to find the words. Finally, I stepped in. Mike made some investment decisions, I said gently, with your retirement fund. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. What do you mean? Mike couldn't meet their eyes as he explained. How he convinced their financial advisor to transfer the money, how he'd invested it all in cryptocurrency, how it had seemed like a sure thing until it wasn't. The silence that followed his confession was deafening. All of it? Dad finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Everything we saved. Mike nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. I thought I could make it grow faster, give you the retirement you deserved. Mom's face had gone pale. But how will we? She couldn't finish the sentence. I watched as the reality of what Mike had done sank in. All their plans. The small condo in Florida they'd been looking at, the the trip to Europe they'd been saving for, the comfortable retirement they'd worked so hard to build, gone because my brother thought he knew better than 40 years of careful planning. There might be a way to recover some of it, I said carefully. About half the money was transferred to a private wallet. If we can access that wallet, those funds might still be there. Hope flickered across their faces, but I could see the trust was already broken. Mike had always been their golden child, the charming son who could talk his way out of anything. But not this time. I trusted you, Dad said, his voice heavy with disappointment. We trusted you. Mike broke down completely then, sobbing like I hadn't seen since we were kids. I'll fix this, he promised between tears. I'll work 3 jobs if I have to. I'll pay back every penny. But we all knew that was impossible. Even if he worked for the next 20 years, he couldn't replace what they'd lost. As we drove back to my place later that night, Mike was quiet, the weight of what he'd done finally sinking in. What do we do now? He asked as I parked outside my building. I thought about the recovery phrase stored safely in my encrypted files, about the plan I'd been forming since I first discovered what he'd done. Now, I said, you learn what it means to be responsible for your actions. If you want my help recovering those coins, you're going to have to earn it. How? First, you're going to sell your fancy car, your designer clothes, everything you bought with Mom and Dad's money. Every penny goes to them. He nodded quickly. Of course, anything. Second, you're going to move back home and help them. Dad shouldn't be working at his age, and Mom's arthritis is getting worse. They need support, not someone gambling with their future. Okay, he agreed, though I could see him struggling with the idea of giving up his downtown apartment and luxury lifestyle. And third, I continued, you're going to learn exactly how cryptocurrency works, not from influencers and Reddit posts, but from actual experts. I've arranged for you to take some courses at the Tech Institute where I teach part-time. He looked at me in surprise. You teach 2 nights a week, cybersecurity and blockchain technology. Maybe if you paid attention to what I do for a living instead of dismissing it as boring tech stuff, you wouldn't be in this mess. The jab hit home. Mike slumped in his seat, all his usual bravado gone. How long will it take? To recover the wallet? I smiled slightly. That depends on you. Show me you're serious about making things right, and we'll talk about the recovery phrase. As he got out of my car, I could see him processing everything, the magnitude of what he'd lost, the long road ahead to even begin making amends. Good. He needed to feel this to understand that actions have consequences, because what he didn't know was that this was just the beginning of his lesson. The next few weeks tested Mike in ways he'd never experienced. True to his word, he sold his Tesla, his designer wardrobe, and moved back into our parents' house. His downtown apartment went on the market, though the real estate agent warned it might take months to find a buyer in the current market. I watched from a distance as he struggled to adjust to his new reality. Every morning, he drove Dad to the high school in our old family Honda, then spent his days helping Mom around the house and applying for jobs. His crypto trading friends stopped calling once word got out about his losses. Meanwhile, I kept the recovery phrase safely encrypted, waiting to see if Mike's transformation was genuine or just another act. One evening, about a month after the confession, I stopped by our parents' house to check on things. I found Mike in the kitchen, helping Mom with dinner. He was wearing an old t-shirt and jeans, a far cry from his usual designer outfits. The hospital called. Mom said as I sat down at the counter, "They're offering me my old position back full-time." "Mom, no," Mike protested. "Your arthritis." "We need the money," she said simply. "Your father's substitute teaching salary isn't enough." I watched the guilt wash over Mike's face. This was exactly what he needed to see, the real consequences of his actions. "Actually," I said, pulling out my laptop, "I might have some news about that." They both looked at me expectantly. "I've been doing some research," I continued, opening my files. "And I think I found something interesting about the wallet where Mike transferred half the funds." Mike nearly dropped the plate he was drying. "You found the recovery phrase?" "Not exactly," I said, though the phrase was sitting in my encrypted folder. "But I found a trail. The wallet's still active, and the coins haven't been moved." Hope flickered across their faces. "How much?" Mom asked quietly. "If we can access it?" "About $1.2 million at current market rates." Mike sat down heavily. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me sooner?" Because you weren't ready, I said firmly. You needed to understand what you've done first. And speaking of understanding, I pulled out a stack of papers. How are those blockchain technology courses going? He actually smiled. Better than I expected. I finally understand what a private key actually is and how wallet security works. I can't believe I was trading all that money without really knowing how any of it worked. That's exactly why I didn't tell you about this sooner, I said. Knowledge matters, Mike. Real knowledge, not just hype and FOMO. Mom looked between us. So you can get the money back. Maybe, I said carefully, but it's going to take time, and there are no guarantees. In the meantime, I pulled out another document. I set up a monthly transfer from my savings to help with expenses. Sarah, no, Mom protested. We can't take your money. You're not taking it, I insisted. I'm helping my family. That's what we do, right? Help each other. The right way, not by gambling with people's futures. Mike flinched at that, but nodded. She's right, Mom. Let us help. Over the next 2 months, I watched Mike continue to change. He found a job at a local tech company. Entry level, nothing glamorous, but honest work. He attended his blockchain courses diligently, actually engaging with the material instead of just looking for get-rich-quick schemes. Most importantly, he spent time with our parents, really seeing them for the first time in years. He drove Mom to her doctor's appointments, helped Dad with house repairs they'd been putting off, and slowly began to rebuild their trust. One evening, after a family dinner, Mike pulled me aside. I know what you're doing, he said quietly. What do you mean? The recovery phrase. You've had it all along, haven't you? I studied his face, looking for signs of his old entitled anger, but saw only tired acceptance. What makes you think that? He laughed softly. Because you're you, Sarah. You've always been 10 steps ahead of everyone else. You probably found it weeks before the crash, didn't you? I nodded slowly. I was monitoring your transactions. I saw where you moved the funds, and I found the phrase when I was going through your backup files. Why didn't you stop me before I lost the rest? Would you have listened? I asked. Or would you have accused me of being jealous of your success, like you did when I warned you about the risks? He had the grace to look ashamed. You're right. I wouldn't have listened. I had to learn the hard way. And have you? Learned? He gestured around the kitchen, at the dishes he'd just washed, the grocery list he'd made for Mom, the budget spreadsheet on his laptop. I think I'm starting to. It's not just about the money, is it? It's about responsibility, about thinking beyond yourself. I pulled out my phone and opened my encrypted files. The recovery phrase is yours, I said, showing him the screen. But think carefully about what you do with it. There's more at stake here than just money. He stared at the string of words that could restore half of what he'd lost, but didn't immediately reach for my phone. Can we wait? He asked. I want to finish my courses first, really understand what I'm doing. And maybe we should talk to a financial advisor about the best way to handle it. I smiled, feeling proud of my little brother for perhaps the first time in years. That, I said, sounds like a very good idea. 3 months later, we sat down with our parents and a financial advisor to discuss the recovered funds. The money wouldn't fully replace what was lost, but it would ensure they could retire comfortably, if modestly. Mike insisted that the funds be placed in a conservative investment portfolio, with him having no direct access. I've learned my lesson, he said when Mom tried to protest. Some things are too important to risk. As we left the advisor's office, Mike turned to me. Thank you, he said. Not just for saving the money, but for teaching me what it really means to take care of family. I hugged him, remembering the arrogant crypto bro he'd been just months ago. That's what big sisters are for, I said. To help you learn from your mistakes, even when the mistake is $2.4 million. Especially then. Today, our family is stronger than ever. Mom retired properly, with Dad joining her. They never did buy that condo in Florida, but they seem content with their modest lifestyle and weekly family dinners. Mike continues to work at the tech company, where he's been promoted twice. He's paying back what he can to our parents, though they insist it's unnecessary. More importantly, he's found purpose in helping others avoid the mistakes he made, volunteering to teach financial literacy at the local community center. As for me, I keep the story of the recovery phrase as a reminder that sometimes the best way to help someone isn't to save them from their mistakes, but to help them learn from them. Last week, Mike brought his new girlfriend to family dinner. When she mentioned being interested in cryptocurrency, I watched him launch into a careful explanation of blockchain technology, investment risks, and the importance of doing thorough research. The most expensive lesson I ever learned, he told her, was that there are no shortcuts to building something worthwhile. Mom squeezed my hand under the table, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. The recovery phrase still sits in my encrypted files, a reminder of both how much we almost lost and how much we gained. But these days, its value isn't measured in cryptocurrency or dollars. It's measured in the lessons learned, the trust rebuilt, and the family bonds strengthened through crisis. As I watched Mike help Dad with the dishes later that evening, discussing responsible investment strategies and the importance of diversification, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best returns don't come from the market, they come from learning who you really are and what truly matters. The boardroom felt suffocating as I sat there, watching James pace in front of the projection screen. His expensive suit and perfectly coiffed hair screamed success, while his smirk spoke volumes about how he viewed me, the grieving widow who needed to be managed. The numbers don't lie, he said, clicking to the next slide. Since David's passing 6 months ago, our stock has dropped 15%. The market is losing confidence in quantum tech's leadership. My name is Rachel Chen, and 6 months ago, I lost my husband to a car accident. Today, I was about to lose his company too, or so my brother-in-law thought. Our shareholders are nervous, James continued, his voice dripping with fake concern. They're worried about having well, let's be honest here, a housewife controlling 51% of a major tech company. The other board members shifted uncomfortably. They'd known me for years as David's wife, the woman who hosted company parties and attended charity events on his arm. The woman who, as far as they knew, had no technical background, no business experience, no qualifications beyond being married to their brilliant CEO. If only they knew. Rachel, James turned to me, his expression a masterpiece of condescending concern. You know, David would want what's best for the company. My proposal is more than generous. We'll buy your shares at a premium. You can keep the house, the cars, maintain your lifestyle. But let those of us who understand this industry take control. I looked down at the proposal in front of me, fighting to keep my expression neutral. The generous offer would indeed keep me wealthy, but it would give James complete control of quantum tech, the company David and I had built from nothing. And if I refuse? I asked quietly. James's smile tightened. Then I'll be forced to call for a vote of no confidence. The board already supports me. They know you're not qualified to make decisions about quantum computing and AI development. I see. I closed the folder containing his proposal. And what about Project Phoenix? The room went silent. Project Phoenix was quantum tech's most closely guarded secret, a revolutionary quantum encryption system that could change the face of cybersecurity. As far as the world knew, it was David's final project, still in development. James' confidence faltered for a moment. Project Phoenix is proceeding according to schedule. Really? I raised an eyebrow. So you understand the modifications I made to the quantum entanglement algorithm last week? The ones that increased efficiency by 40%? His face went blank. Around the table, board members started whispering to each other. What modifications? James demanded. David's original design was flawed, I cut in. It couldn't scale beyond local networks. The new architecture I implemented allows for global deployment while maintaining quantum coherence. The whispers grew louder. James's face reddened. You expect us to believe you understand quantum computing? You've never even worked in tech. I smiled, thinking about the past 5 years, about the late nights working alongside David, developing algorithms, solving problems that had stumped the industry's best minds. About our decision to keep my involvement secret, knowing how the tech world would react to a female Asian developer, especially one married to the CEO. Actually, I said, standing up and walking to the computer connected to the projector, I've been working in tech for longer than you have, James. I just did it under a different name. I typed quickly, logging into a secure server. The screen filled with code, the core architecture of Project Phoenix. Do you recognize this coding style? I asked the board members. It's remarkably similar to the work of R.C. Wang, isn't it? The effect was immediate. Everyone in tech knew R.C. Wang, the mysterious developer whose innovations had driven quantum tech's success for the past 5 years. The genius who never appeared in public, never gave interviews, communicating only through code commits and technical documentation. That's impossible, James sputtered. R.C. Wang is. Me, I said simply. Rachel Chen Wang. David and I decided early on that my work would be judged more fairly if people didn't know I was his wife. So we created a persona, the reclusive genius who just happened to collaborate brilliantly with Quantum Tech's CEO. I pulled up more files, years of development logs, emails between David and me discussing technical details, video recordings of us working late in our home office. David wasn't just my husband. I continued, my voice soft but firm. He was my partner in every sense. We built this company together. The only difference is he did it publicly while I worked in the shadows. The board members were staring at their tablets, where I just sent copies of all the documentation. James looked like he'd been hit by a truck. This is a trick, he said weakly. Some sort of deception. Would you like me to explain exactly how the quantum entanglement modifications work? I offered. Or maybe you prefer to discuss the neural network architecture I designed for our AI division, the one you've been taking credit for managing these past 6 months. The next hour in the boardroom was unlike anything anyone present had ever experienced. I walked them through Project Phoenix of architecture, explaining complex quantum computing concepts with the ease of someone who had spent years immersed in the field. With each explanation, each technical detail I elaborated on, James's face grew paler. But the patents, he finally interrupted, grasping at straws. They're all in David's name. I pulled up another file. Actually, they're jointly held. David insisted on it, though I wanted to keep using the R.C. Wang persona. I smiled slightly at the memory. He said someday the world would need to know the truth. Marcus Chen, our head of development and no relation despite the shared surname, leaned forward. The quantum bridge protocol, that was you. The one that solved our coherence issues. I nodded. David was brilliant with hardware, but software was always my strength. We complemented each other perfectly. That's why he never fully explained how certain systems worked. Marcus said, realization dawning on his face. He always deflected to R.C. Wang's documentation. Because I wrote it, I confirmed. David and I had an agreement. He handled the public face of the company, the meetings, the presentations. I focused on development, on solving the technical problems that kept us ahead of the competition. James had remained unusually quiet, his eyes darting between me and his tablet. I could almost see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find a way to discredit me. Even if this is true, he finally said, running a tech company requires more than just technical knowledge. It needs business acumen, leadership skills. You mean like the skills I used to negotiate our Series C funding? I interrupted. The deal I closed with Vector Capital while using the R.C. Wang persona. More murmurs around the table. The Vector Capital deal had been legendary. A $300 million investment on incredibly favorable terms, negotiated entirely through encrypted communications with the mysterious R.C. Wang. That's right, I continued. I handled most of our major deals. The investors actually preferred dealing with R.C. Wang. They said they'd never met someone who understood both the technical and business sides so completely. I clicked to a new slide showing our company's growth over the past 5 years. Every major innovation, every significant breakthrough. They all came after R.C. Wang joined the company, after I started working with David. This is absurd, James snapped, finally losing his composure. You expect us to believe that all this time, while you were playing the perfect corporate wife, hosting dinner parties and charity events, you were secretly some kind of tech genius. No, I said calmly. I expect you to look at the evidence in front of you and make a rational decision about what's best for this company. I turned to address the entire board. I understand your concerns about leadership, but ask yourselves this: who really knows quantum technology? Who understands where we're going and how to get there? The person who created our core technologies or the person who's been trying to take credit for them? The board members exchanged glances. Patricia Morrison, our longest-serving member, cleared her throat. Mrs. Chen, Rachel, why reveal this now? Why not continue as R.C. Wang? I thought about David, about our late-night conversations about the future. Because David was right. The world needs to know that innovation doesn't look like what they expect. That breakthrough ideas can come from anyone, regardless of their gender, their background, or whether they fit the tech industry's preconceptions. I pulled up one final document, the last email David had sent me just hours before the accident. My brilliant Rachel, if anything ever happens to me, don't let them push you into the shadows. Show them who you really are. Show them what we built together. All my love, David. I've spent 5 years hiding who I am, I said quietly. I won't do it anymore. This company needs leadership that understands both its technology and its potential. I am that leader, whether you choose to accept it or not. James stood up abruptly. This is all very theatrical, but it doesn't change the fact that I have the board's support. I moved to call for an immediate vote on my proposal to purchase Rachel's shares. I smiled. Actually, James, I don't think you do have the board's support. Not anymore. Marcus Chen was already shaking his head. Not after this. Rachel, or RST. Wang has been the driving force behind every major advancement we've made. We'd be fools to let her go. Other board members nodded in agreement. James looked around the room, watching his carefully constructed plan crumble. This isn't over, he said, gathering his papers. I'll have my lawyers review everything. If there's even a hint of impropriety, of backdated documents or falsified records, you'll find everything in order. I cut in. David and I were very careful with our documentation. But by all means, have your lawyers look. While they do, I'll be focusing on completing Project Phoenix's global rollout, unless you'd like to explain to our shareholders why you're trying to force out the person who actually developed it. He stormed out of the boardroom, leaving a heavy silence behind. Patricia Morrison was the first to speak. I think we've all underestimated you, Rachel. Some of us for years. I thought about all the board meetings I'd sat through quietly, all the times I'd listened to James and others dismiss or minimize my husband's, our achievements. Yes, I said simply, you have. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? The weeks following my revelation were a whirlwind of change. News of R.C. Wang's true identity hit the tech world like a tsunami. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The grieving widow who turned out to be a secret tech genius. The woman who had revolutionized quantum computing while letting others take the credit. Mrs. Chen, a reporter from Tech Weekly, asked during my first public interview, why maintain the deception for so long? Weren't you angry about not getting credit for your work? I sat in my office, David's old office, looking at his picture on the desk. It was never about credit, I said. David and I knew how the tech world would react to a female Asian developer, especially one married to the CEO. We wanted our work to be judged on its merits, not clouded by prejudice or assumptions. The reporter nodded. And your brother-in-law? Sources say he's challenging the authenticity of your work. I smiled, thinking of James' increasingly desperate attempts to discredit me. His lawyers had spent weeks combing through every line of code, every patent filing, every piece of documentation. James is welcome to his doubts, I replied. The code speaks for itself. What I didn't mention was the email I'd received that morning from James's lawyers, quietly withdrawing their challenges. They'd found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Every innovation, every breakthrough had been meticulously documented, jointly credited to David and me from the start. The real surprise came a week later, when I arrived at the office to find Marcus Chen waiting with an unusual request. The development team wants you to do a code review, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. In person. They've been working with R.C. Wang's documentation for years, but now they want to learn directly from you. I spent the afternoon in the development lab, surrounded by engineers who had once seen me only as the CEO's wife. Their respect wasn't grudging or forced. It was earned, line of code by line of code, as I walked them through the systems I'd designed. It all makes sense now, one young developer said. The elegant solutions, the innovative approaches, they had your signature all along. We just didn't know to look for it. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, Patricia Morrison appeared in my doorway. The board has been discussing the future of quantum tech, she said without preamble. We'd like to make your position as CEO permanent. I looked up from my computer, where I'd been reviewing the latest Project Phoenix tests, and James has resigned from the board, effective immediately. She smiled slightly. His last attempt to challenge your work backfired rather spectacularly. Turns out several of his own innovations were actually based on incomplete copies of your prototypes. I wasn't surprised. James had always been better at taking credit than creating something original. There's something else, Patricia continued. We've had inquiries from several major tech companies about potential collaborations. It seems R.C. Wong's reputation carries even more weight now that people know the full story. I thought about David, about our dreams for quantum tech. What kinds of collaborations? Google wants to discuss quantum-enhanced machine learning. Microsoft is interested in integrating Project Phoenix into their cloud security. And SpaceX, she paused for effect, wants to talk about quantum communications for their Mars mission. I looked at David's picture again, remembering our late-night conversations about the future of technology. He had always pushed me to think bigger, to see beyond current limitations. Schedule the meetings, I said. But make it clear, I'll be representing quantum tech as myself. No more shadows, no more hiding. The next month was a blur of meetings, presentations, and negotiations. I spoke at tech conferences, did interviews with major publications, and began mentoring programs for young women in STEM. The story of R.C. Wong became a rallying cry for change in the tech industry. James, meanwhile, had disappeared from public view. The last I heard, he was trying to start his own tech company, but investors were wary. It turned out his reputation for taking credit for others' work had spread. 1 year to the day after my revelation in the boardroom, I stood on stage at the World Technology Summit, preparing to unveil Project Phoenix's global launch. The audience was packed with industry leaders, investors, and media. Quantum computing isn't just about processing power. I began looking out at the sea of faces. It's about seeing possibilities others miss, about having the courage to pursue solutions that seem impossible. I clicked to the first slide, a picture of David and me in our garage where we'd built our first quantum prototype. This is where quantum tech really began, I continued. Not in a fancy lab or corporate office, but in a garage where two people dared to dream big. One of those people worked in the spotlight while the other stayed in the shadows. Today, we're bringing those innovations into the light. The presentation was a triumph. Project Phoenix's capabilities exceeded even the most optimistic predictions. Our stock price soared, and more importantly, we were changing the face of cybersecurity forever. After the presentation, as I was gathering my things, I found a note that had been slipped into my bag. It was from James. Rachel, I was wrong. About everything, I'm sorry. James. I folded the note and put it away. His apology meant little now, but at least he had finally seen the truth, that innovation doesn't care about gender, background, or appearances. It cares about brilliance, determination, and the courage to stand in the light. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the computers and equipment where David and I had spent so many happy hours working together. On my screen was the code for our next big project, a quantum AI system that could revolutionize medical research. You were right, David, I whispered to his picture. The world did need to know the truth. And now they do. I began to type, my fingers flying over the keyboard as new ideas flowed. But this time, I wasn't hiding behind a pseudonym or working in the shadows. I was Rachel Chen, CEO of Quantum Tech, writing code that would change the world. And I was finally, completely myself.
Thanks for leaving, Olivia said with a sneer as she glanced at me. I just stared back silently. We're trying to save money on wages. We don't want someone who takes advantage of overtime pay in our company, Jerry added, looking satisfied. A week later, I kept receiving calls from the company. Hello, I answered. The president asked, who are you? I chuckled at his question. I'm Nicole Wallace. I'm 57 years old and I've worked here for 35 years since I graduated from college. Our company provides administrative support, handles social insurance and taxes for our clients, especially for busy company presidents who focus on sales and lack time for paperwork. I work in the tax department. I earned my bookkeeping and tax accountant qualifications in school, which led me to join this company. Currently, I manage 41 clients, keeping me quite busy. Even though a part-timer helps with accounting entries, it's still a lot to handle. But I can't show any weakness. Our clients are long-term relationships, many of whom have faced tough times. Seeing them persevere motivates me to keep going, so here I am again today, in front of my computer. Lately, I've been having a hard time. Jerry and Olivia have been bothering me a lot. Jerry, who's 6 years younger than me, is now the head of our tax department. He used to be just a regular colleague, but ever since he got promoted 5 months ago, his attitude completely changed. He used to speak politely, but now he's always sarcastic or complaining. "Nickel, what are you doing? You've got some nerve slacking off during work hours," he'd say, glaring at me while I'm researching tax-saving strategies for our clients. When I tried to argue back, Jerry stayed calm and said, "Just check the manual for that. Don't do anything unnecessary, and if you end up working overtime, don't expect to get paid for it." I overheard Olivia, Jerry's assistant, saying, "Nickel, you should work more efficiently. At this rate, you'll never finish." She laughed mockingly, adding, "That's probably why you're still just a regular employee." I was actually the first one offered the promotion to head the department, but I turned it down. Being the head would mean more time managing and less time working directly with clients. Since it was an internal offer, Jerry and Olivia didn't know about it. "I'll make sure to keep up with my regular duties," I managed to say. Despite everything, Jerry and Olivia kept harassing me. "You're racking up overtime again. What a waste," Jerry's angry voice echoed today. "Nickel, enough already. Your constant overtime is dragging down the whole tax department's performance," Olivia sighed. The reason for yesterday's overtime was simple. Jerry had let a month's worth of declaration forms pile up, all due by the end of the month. After work yesterday, he abruptly dumped several client files on my desk. My heart sank when I saw them. "Wait, aren't these all due this month?" I asked in confusion, but Jerry was already packing up. "I'm leaving. Take care of these," he said briskly and hurried out of the office. "Good luck," Olivia added, following Jerry with a mocking laugh. Unbelievable. I sighed as I opened the client files left on my desk. Some of them were supposed to be Olivia's responsibility. I sighed even deeper. I understood why Jerry was harassing me. They wanted me to retire quickly. I have more experience and deeper knowledge in taxation than him, so other members of the tax department often come to me with their questions instead of Jerry. There are other reasons why everyone avoids Jerry. He looks oily and unfriendly. The only female employee who stays close to him is Olivia. Jerry has a preference for younger women. That's probably why he wants me to retire, so the other female employees will rely on him more. It's such shallow thinking, it makes me uneasy. Also, he simply doesn't like me. Olivia was harassing me to gain favor with Jerry. Since Jerry evaluates the tax department's performance, she probably aimed to undermine me to get a good evaluation from him. Anyway, I have to handle these declarations. I need to prepare tax forms for my assigned companies, but it seems like I won't finish today's work either. If I try to claim overtime, I'll just get complaints from Jerry and Olivia, so I resigned myself to working unpaid overtime. One day I was suddenly summoned to the president's office. Our company had recently undergone a change in leadership. The founder's father, who had been running the company, had fallen ill, and his son, who previously worked elsewhere, took over despite being unfamiliar with our operations. "Excuse me," I said as I entered the president's office. I noticed Jerry and Olivia there, both wearing unpleasant smirks. "Why are Jerry and the others here?" I muttered quietly, trying not to be heard. In this tense and strange atmosphere, the president spoke. "Nickel, we need you to resign by the end of this month." "Excuse me? What do you mean?" I asked, feeling bewildered. "I've been informed by Jerry and Olivia that you've been billing excessive overtime. While other members of the tax department have around 16 hours of overtime per month, you've logged over 83 hours. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Jerry and Olivia haven't logged any overtime this month. Quite impressive, don't you think?" The president looked at me sternly. The reason my overtime was so high this month was because I was covering Jerry and Olivia's workload. I wanted to explain, but blaming Jerry could make it seem like I couldn't manage my time. So I stuck to the facts. I haven't overbilled for overtime. It's because I couldn't finish my work within regular hours, I clarified. The president sighed deeply. "I'm skeptical, but without evidence, I won't pursue it further. However, we can't continue to employ someone who works at that pace, so I need you to resign." The president seemed resolute, asking me to leave the company where I'd dedicated my entire 35-year career. I felt worn out too. No matter how much extra work I took on, it never seemed to be acknowledged. Instead, I ended up shouldering Jerry and Olivia's responsibilities as well. "Yes, I understand. I'll resign at the end of this month," I repeated to the president, realizing I had already agreed to it. I glanced at Jerry and Olivia. They were smiling smugly, clearly pleased with the outcome. After leaving the president's office with them, Olivia sneered at me, saying, "Thanks for quitting." I just stared back at her silently. Jerry echoed the sentiment, looking down on me as well. "We're cutting labor costs. We don't need someone who takes advantage of overtime pay at our company," he added, seemingly pleased. As I watched them chat cheerfully, I began preparing handover documents for all my clients. It was important to ensure a smooth transition, so I made sure to personally say goodbye to those I was handing over to. I also tried to schedule a meeting with the president to bid farewell in person. For those I couldn't meet, I sent letters informing them of my successor. A week after resigning, I finally had a moment to relax at home. I had been swamped with handover tasks right up to my last day, and even before that, my workload had been heavy. A bit of relaxation seemed well-deserved. Just as I was thinking this, my phone rang. When I saw the call was from the company, I hesitated. I had already taken care of the social insurance procedures, so I ignored the first few calls. But they persisted, even calling from Jerry and Olivia's personal phones. Perhaps they hoped I would answer if it seemed urgent from the company. Eventually, feeling reluctant, I picked up. "Hello. Nickel, it's chaotic here," the president said urgently. "Who exactly are you?" I chuckled bitterly. "Who am I now? Just an unemployed woman. I've resigned from the company, so that's all I am at the moment." The president continued urgently. "Since you left, we've had 55 calls to halt transactions with the company. Please come back immediately." With that, he abruptly hung up. He sounded genuinely panicked. It seemed I had no choice but to return. Reluctantly, I got up and headed back to the company. As soon as I arrived, Jerry and Olivia were waiting for me. Their faces were pale, and they had dark circles under their eyes. "What's going on with both of you?" I asked, surprised by their sudden change in appearance. Jerry glared at me and said sharply, "Since you left, we've been bombarded with calls to stop transactions. Not just from your clients, but from potential new clients we were about to onboard. What did you do?" Olivia also eyed me suspiciously. "I never imagined Nickel would stoop so low." "I'm truly disappointed," Jerry remarked, his voice filled with disillusionment. The reason for their worn-out appearance was likely due to handling all the cancellations. I hadn't taken any actions against the clients, but I had a hunch why they were canceling their transactions. "Well, these cancellations seem inevitable now," I muttered quietly. "So you did do something," Jerry erupted. "Get to the president's office immediately." He then hurried me along to the president's office, with Olivia following closely. "President, I've brought her," Jerry declared forcefully as he swung open the door, with Olivia entering hastily behind him. "I've been waiting," the president said, fixing his gaze on me. Jerry accused me as if I were the culprit. "It appears that Nickel was involved in the cancellation of transactions with our clients. We should not only have her resign but also consider legal action for damages," Olivia argued vehemently, choosing her words carefully in front of the president. The president ignored Jerry and Olivia's interruptions and turned to me again. "Why did so many companies stop transactions after you left?" I took a deep breath and replied firmly, "It's simple. Our clients didn't just need basic tax management. They valued the personalized tax-saving strategies I'd offered. They could get cheaper services elsewhere, but they chose to stay with us because of the tailored approach I provided." Jerry snapped at me. "Who do you think you are to talk like that to the president? Do you really believe you're that indispensable?" Olivia taunted, "That's absurd. It has to be Nickel's doing." The president's expression was serious. Jerry and Olivia focus on operating strictly by the book, optimizing efficiency. But Nickel's approach involves more than that. It's about offering custom strategies that benefit our clients individually. One-size-fits-all solutions don't always meet our clients' needs, which is why many valued Nickel's contributions and chose to remain with us. Jerry grew visibly frustrated. "How can we justify spending so much time on each client's case? It's inefficient." "Yeah, it's not practical," Olivia added emphatically. The president sighed deeply and revealed, "Actually, I just spoke with Dad, the former president. Some of the clients who stopped transactions went directly to him to discuss Nickel." I was taken aback by this unexpected turn. I hadn't realized the extent to which clients valued my contributions. Dad mentioned that the tax department thrived because of Nickel. She not only managed her own clients exceptionally well but also supported her colleagues' clients, offering expertise that Jerry can't match. Dad also mentioned that if Nickel hadn't declined a promotion earlier, she would have been in a higher position than a department head by now, the president said with a troubled expression. "No way," Olivia exclaimed, clearly shocked. It seemed she couldn't fathom the idea of me potentially being her superior. The president continued, his tone regretful. "I deeply apologize for asking you to resign, Nickel. Can we rescind your resignation? You're indispensable to our company." I was genuinely pleased by the president's change of heart, but I hesitated to accept it. Before I could respond, Jerry interrupted forcefully. "President, what do you mean she's better than me? I can't accept this." Jerry was visibly upset, his voice betraying his frustration. Olivia joined in, protesting. "Jerry is an excellent leader who genuinely cares for his team. Are you really favoring Nickel over him? That's unfair." The president fixed a stern look on them both. "In fact, since Nickel resigned, we've been receiving numerous complaints from the tax department. It seems that both of you have been offloading your responsibilities onto others, haven't you?" "What? That's not true. Jerry's face paled, his denial immediate. The president spoke with a look of disappointment. I've heard from the staff. Jerry, you've been delegating the preparation of your clients' declaration forms to your subordinates, even assigning Olivia's workload to them for many clients. Beside Jerry, who grew visibly paler, Olivia trembled when her name was brought up. There have been reports that you shifted your responsibilities onto Nicole before she resigned. Jerry, you even called her a time thief. It seems the roles have been reversed, haven't they? The president sighed heavily. No, that's not true, Jerry stammered, clearly flustered and unable to defend himself. Watching Jerry and Olivia both turn pale, the president continued sternly, furthermore, there have been reports of a relationship between you two. You've been seen leaving work together frequently. But Jerry, aren't you married? The president's glare intensified as he looked at Jerry and Olivia. I was simply mentoring Olivia in my role as her superior, nothing more, Jerry struggled to explain, but the president produced several receipts. These are expense receipts flagged by the accounting department, dining expenses claimed by Jerry. Who were these meals with? Certainly not clients, right? Jerry was sweating profusely, unable to answer. Olivia's face turned ashen. Jerry and Olivia, not only have you neglected your responsibilities and inflated expense claims, but you've also engaged in an inappropriate relationship within the office, despite being married. According to company policy, I am terminating your employment effective immediately, the president stated calmly and decisively. Jerry and Olivia pleaded desperately. Please wait. I'll retract the expense claims, just don't fire me. I have a family, Jerry begged, trying to reverse his termination. Olivia echoed his plea. Please, I don't want to lose my job. I'll apologize to Nicole and others for dumping work on them. Olivia was visibly on the brink of tears, realizing the gravity of being fired for neglecting her duties and having an affair with a superior. She must have been deeply concerned about her reputation. Trying to offer some advice, I said to Jerry and Olivia, why continue to resist? It's not helping your situation. Jerry shot me a glare. Shut up? What could someone like you possibly understand? I sighed and replied, Jerry, it was your actions that led to my resignation. It's just karma. What goes around comes around. Perhaps it's time for you to take responsibility and do some self-reflection. Damn it, Jerry exclaimed in frustration, while Olivia bit her lip anxiously. I haven't disclosed everything yet, but there's more to Jerry and Olivia's misconduct. Should I share more details? I asked the president with a wry smile. The stories of Jerry and Olivia's behavior were widely known in the tax department, and their reputations had preceded them. No, please don't, Nicole, please stop, they both pleaded urgently, trying to halt me. Giving them a firm ultimatum, I said misdeeds have a way of surfacing eventually. It might be in your best interest to confront reality before it escalates further. At my words, both Jerry and Olivia fell to their knees. The president wasted no time and terminated their employment on the spot. Later, I disclosed their wrongdoings, which included Jerry fabricating business trips to spend time with Olivia for days, as well as pressuring disliked colleagues to resign by unfairly reprimanding them and imposing sudden, unreasonable deadlines. Former employees who had resigned had asked me to keep quiet initially, but now that they were happily employed elsewhere, I felt it was appropriate to speak up. The president was incensed by the revelations. He expressed his anger by docking their final salaries and announced plans to conduct a thorough investigation into past inflated expense claims. Tearfully, Jerry pleaded with the president, please don't dock my salary. What will I say to my family? Eventually, Jerry's affair with Olivia came to light to his wife, resulting in their divorce. Both now faced claims for compensation in the divorce proceedings. For some reason, Jerry reached out to me, pleading, please, can you convince the president to reconsider the termination? Olivia and I are in serious trouble now. Jerry and Olivia were having a hard time finding new jobs because the tax industry is tight-knit. If you mess up, everyone hears about it, and that makes it tough to get hired elsewhere. They really need money for their divorce settlement and living expenses, so they're doing manual labor on construction sites now. It's a big change from their usual office work. Olivia calls me crying often, saying, Nicole, please help. I just wanted a raise and a better life, she would say tearfully, but I couldn't bring myself to help. I still vividly remembered the stress and problems they caused me. I would say to Olivia, you made your choices, now you have to deal with them, I explained. You can't expect sympathy when you never showed any to others. But it's so tough, Olivia would cry. I never thought it would turn out like this. Actions have consequences, I replied. You and Jerry brought this upon yourselves. You can't undo it now. You have to face the consequences of your actions. Olivia's despairing cries were the consequences of her own decisions. It was a tough lesson, but one she needed to learn. Meanwhile, I found solace in my new routine. Working at my friend's tax office was fulfilling. I enjoyed the work and the positive environment, unlike the toxic atmosphere Jerry and Olivia had created. The president's requests for my return became more frequent. "Please come back, Nickel, we really need you," he would urge. Each time I would politely decline, saying, "I'm sorry, but I've moved on. I appreciate the offer though." Every day, starting my own office seemed like a clearer goal. In my own space, I could make the rules. No more unfair treatment or office politics. My focus would be on giving my clients the best service, building relationships based on trust and respect. In this new phase of my life, I finally felt at ease. I felt lighter, free from the burdens of the past. My days had purpose, and my nights were calm, without the anxiety that used to bother me. Looking ahead, I saw endless opportunities. I could learn more, face new challenges, and create something from scratch. My second chance was just beginning, and I was eager for what lay ahead. Freed from the negativity of my old job, I embraced the opportunities ahead with enthusiasm. As I planned my new business, I recalled the support and trust my clients had shown me. They were my motivation to stay in this field. Their faith in my abilities formed the bedrock of my new venture. With them in mind, I felt confident in my future success. Though my journey had been challenging, it had also made me resilient. Strengthened by my experiences, I was prepared to turn the page and embark on a new chapter with renewed vigor and a clear vision. Ultimately, Olivia and Jerry's setbacks served as a stark reminder of the importance of integrity and respect in the workplace. Their story underscored my commitment to fostering a positive and supportive environment in my own office. Moving forward, I carried the knowledge that I could overcome any obstacle. My determination and resilience had brought me this far and would continue to guide me in the future. My second chance wasn't just a continuation of the past, it was a fresh start filled with promise and potential. "Oh, Mom," when I came back from shopping, I saw my daughter Madison crouched at the entrance with a big belly. She looked really tired and her face was thin and pale. Her eyes were a bit unfocused as she looked up at me. Next to her, a little child was holding on tightly to Madison, calling Mom, Mom. I realized this child was my granddaughter, Harper. I brought them both inside and asked what happened. Madison told me that her husband Stephen got frustrated because she couldn't move around much during her second pregnancy and had left them in front of the house. Madison was clearly in her last month of pregnancy and needed care. Even though the days were sunny and warm, the wind was cold. I felt so angry, wondering what Stephen would have done if I hadn't been there. I didn't think he was the kind of person to do something like this. Pregnancy isn't an illness, right? We have pregnant women at my work who do their jobs from home just fine. And Harper, she's always crying and so loud. My colleagues' kids never cry like that. When I finally called Stephen, he sighed loudly on purpose. An unemployed, obese woman and a noisy child are a nuisance. Let her parents take care of them for a while. Realizing it was pointless to talk to him, I decided to focus on caring for Madison and Harper instead. Half a year later, on a spring afternoon, Stephen called. "Hey, what's going on? Your house is gone." At first, I was confused, but then I understood. "You finally noticed," I replied. After hearing the truth, he was speechless and turned pale. "My name is Scarlett. I'm a 58-year-old housewife. My husband passed away about 3 years ago, leaving me alone, but I don't mind being alone. His study is filled with books, including his favorite novels, challenging research papers, magazine clippings, and diaries. Being in the study makes me feel close to him. Sometimes I spend time there, looking through the books. My daughter Madison, her daughter Harper, and Madison's husband Stephen live about a 30-minute drive away in the next town. Stephen works at a big company owned by his dad. At just 33, he's already a department head and is even considered a potential future CEO. Madison and Stephen met at a beer party when Madison was out with friends. One of her friends recognized an old classmate, who turned out to be Stephen. They discovered they worked near each other and started seeing each other more often, either by bumping into one another or going out for drinks with friends. Eventually, this led to a relationship. Madison wasn't the type to make the first move and often called me, unsure of what to do. I wasn't very experienced in love either, so I tell her, "Well, I'm not sure either, but maybe just go out for a meal and enjoy yourselves." Unlike me, my husband had experienced many romances before we met. But when it came to our daughter's love life, we both agreed on one thing: she shouldn't date someone strange. My husband, always protective, even joked about calling himself strange. Their relationship continued smoothly, and within a year, they happily announced their engagement. Stephen, with his strong position in his father's company and his impressive sales skills, had earned my husband's trust enough for us to feel comfortable entrusting our daughter to him. Reflecting on this, my husband reassured me, saying, "I also felt at ease sending our daughter off to such a respectable person." Shortly after, Madison and Stephen married and moved to the next town to begin their life together. Initially, Madison would visit us often, sharing the excitement of her pregnancy and her worries about childbirth. About 3 or 4 months after Madison shared her pregnancy news, my husband tragically passed away. He was involved in a car accident caused by a truck driver who had fallen asleep at the wheel. Both Madison and I were deeply shaken by the sudden loss. We struggled to maintain our composure as we rushed to arrange the funeral and handle the necessary company and government procedures. The days passed quickly, and before we knew it, a month had already gone by. It's strange that I hadn't seen Stephen much since he first came to introduce himself before the wedding. Even at the funeral, he only stayed for about an hour before leaving abruptly. I found it a bit rude, but Madison explained, "That's just how he is. Stephen is always busy with work," she said with a forced smile tinged with sadness. It seemed like she didn't get much chance to talk or spend time with Stephen, who often left early for golf meetings on weekends. Being the son of a company president might excuse his absence somewhat, but I wished he would consider Madison, especially since she was heavily pregnant. As summer drew to a close, Madison returned to our home to give birth. With her belly fully rounded, she was eagerly anticipating meeting her baby. "It's a girl. We've already picked a name," she told me. "Oh, really? What's her name?" I asked. "Harper. Stephen and I chose it," Madison replied, smiling warmly. She gave birth within 2 weeks and soon returned home where Stephen was waiting. "Madison, make sure to visit us sometimes. Bring Harper too," I urged her. I called Madison again, hoping to reconnect, but her response sounded hesitant. "Yeah, maybe once things settle down I'll come over," she replied. Despite my concerns, I hoped it was just a temporary situation. Madison was always busy with childcare and housework, and Stephen, who should have been dependable, often came home late or not until the morning. I wondered aloud, even if he's the president's son, can his job really be that demanding? Despite several attempts to reach out, the pattern remained unchanged. It had been 3 years since Harper was born, yet I had only seen my granddaughter once, right after Madison gave birth. I wanted to support Madison and had expressed this to her many times over the phone, but her responses were always evasive. Before a long weekend, I decided to call Madison again. "Hello, Madison. How have you been? I was thinking of visiting you and Harper soon." I knew I had to be careful not to push too hard. Conversations with friends in the neighborhood had taught me that it's becoming less common for grandparents to see their grandchildren regularly, and pushing too much could strain the relationship further. Madison was my daughter, but I feared this call might lead to rejection, forcing me to accept the situation. With these thoughts, I waited anxiously for Madison's response. "Mom, I haven't been feeling well lately and I need some space. Please don't call me for a while," Madison said over the phone. "Are you okay? If you're not feeling well, I'm really worried. Can I bring over some food?" I asked, concerned. "I don't need it. Can we stop this? I'm going to hang up," Madison replied, sounding frustrated. "Wait, how about Harper and Stephen? Is he doing well? Has he caught a cold?" I pressed, trying to keep the conversation going. "You're being too nosy, Mom. I want to raise my child on my own, so please stop calling," Madison snapped before hanging up abruptly. Feeling hurt and confused, I paused, unsure of what to do next. The brief call left me deeply shaken. I never expected Madison to feel that way about me. I thought I was showing kindness, but now I realized I had been meddling, and it pained me as I stared at the silent phone. Perhaps she was exhausted and stressed from childcare, or maybe I had crossed a line by interfering too much. Considering different possibilities, I acknowledged there might have been fault on my part and decided to stop calling. Still, I couldn't shake the thought. Had my once open and communicative daughter changed so drastically? Despite my reluctance to give up on seeing my granddaughter, I continued to call about once a month. Each time, I faced a distant reception and was denied access to Harper. "Hey, are you feeling all right?" I'd ask, only to receive no reply or have the call abruptly end. Hoping to get a better sense of what was happening, I decided to call Stephen. He was my daughter's husband, and I figured he might have some insight into Madison's and Harper's situation. Stephen never answered the phone promptly, but late one night, he returned my call. "Madison? Oh yes, she's fine," Stephen assured me. "She's doing a great job looking after Harper. You don't need to worry. Madison has always been very responsible." "That's good to hear. Could you let her know I'd like to see her sometime?" I asked, hopefully. "Yes, of course," Stephen replied. "It's odd that Madison isn't picking up her phone lately. That's not like her. It's quite concerning," I added, feeling uneasy about Stephen's responses. His words felt rehearsed, as if he was trying to downplay the situation. About a month later, as autumn set in and I returned home from shopping one day, I spotted a figure sitting on my front porch. At first, I thought it might be a homeless person who had mistaken my house for somewhere else. But as I approached, I realized it was Madison. Madison. And look at that belly. And who is this child? I exclaimed in surprise as I saw Madison's noticeably larger belly, indicating she was pregnant again. "Oh, Mom." Madison's face was tired and drawn, her eyes unfocused. The child next to her clung tightly, calling out, "Mom, Mom." I realized it was Harper. I quickly unlocked the door and ushered them inside, practically carrying them to the living room sofa. I made some hot milk for them to drink. Harper cautiously sipped the warm milk. "It's cooled down now, so it's safe," I reassured her. Harper drank, leaving a white ring around her mouth. Turning to Madison, I started asking questions. "What happened? Why were you sitting outside like that? Where's Steven? What's going on with your home?" Madison began to cry and looked down for a while before speaking. "Take your time," I comforted her, rubbing her back gently. After a moment, she explained that as her second pregnancy progressed, she found it increasingly difficult to manage household chores and take care of Harper, which frustrated Steven. He had driven them to the front of my house and left them there. Seeing Madison heavily pregnant and upset made me furious, imagining what could have happened if I hadn't been home. I immediately called Steven. He hadn't mentioned anything about Madison's pregnancy during our last conversation, which would have prompted me to offer help sooner. After several rings, he answered with a tired voice. "Hello, Steven. What's this I hear about you leaving Madison and Harper outside my house just now?" I asked, my tone filled with anger and concern. Steven replied casually, "Well, that's how it is. Madison hasn't been keeping up with household duties lately, using her pregnancy as an excuse. Even when I come home tired, there's no dinner ready." I was taken aback by his nonchalant response, feeling a mix of disbelief and disappointment. "Not helping because you think it's all Madison's job? Don't you think you should be supporting your wife?" I challenged Steven, my voice tinged with disbelief. "Why should I help? Household chores are Madison's responsibility. She's the housewife," Steven replied dismissively. "I have my own work to focus on. It's only natural she takes care of the house." "Madison is pregnant, Steven. It's not fair to expect her to manage everything alone without any appreciation from you," I countered, trying to reason with him. "Pregnancy isn't an illness. Many pregnant women work remotely just fine at our company. And as for Harper, all kids have their moments. Comparing her to someone else's child isn't fair." Steven sighed dramatically over the phone. "An overweight wife and noisy kids are a hassle. Let the parents deal with them for a while." At that moment, I realized it was pointless to continue the conversation. "Fine by me," I said firmly, hanging up. Steven's mocking laughter lingered in my ears before the call ended. Suppressing my anger and frustration, I focused on what truly mattered, taking care of Madison and Harper. Harper's clothes were stained with food and juice spills, turning into little spots. Her hair also had a faint smell, so my first priority was giving her a bath. The spare clothes in the carry case were slightly dirty too. "We'll need to go shopping for new clothes tomorrow with Grandma," I told her gently. 3-year-old Harper was chatty, talking nonstop about her favorite foods, picture books, and characters from her favorite kids' show. Meanwhile, Madison looked exhausted and worn out from the strain of managing everything on her own. She could barely move from the couch. Quickly, I prepared fresh sheets and set up a bed in an empty room upstairs for Madison to rest. She looked worn out, with rough skin and disheveled hair, which made her look quite pitiful. "Call me if you need anything at all. I'll take care of Harper, so you just focus on resting, okay?" I assured Madison. She nodded gratefully and soon fell asleep, finally able to relax. The next 1 to 2 weeks were spent nursing Madison back to health and caring for Harper. Spending time with my granddaughter, whom I hadn't seen much until then, was incredibly fulfilling and not at all burdensome. It was difficult for me to resist when Harper would plead, "Please buy it," with that sweet voice of hers. As Madison gradually recovered, she began to open up about her past. Steven used to be kind before we got married. He respected my opinions and we would discuss everything together. Those were the happiest times. Her voice grew somber. But after we married, he changed. He started giving orders, saying things like, "You can't rely on your parents. You have to manage all the housework perfectly." I just accepted it all. She shared that she was allowed to come back to her parents' house when Harper was born. Looking back, it felt like I was being manipulated, controlled. He even told me once that I shouldn't rely on you, Mom. "So is that why you hung up quickly when I called?" "Yes, calls with you were forbidden too, so I had to hang up quickly." "I'm really sorry," Madison explained with a mixture of regret and sadness. Later that night, after Harper had fallen asleep, we sat down with ginger tea and talked. I felt a rush of emotions, anger and sorrow mingling together. Steven, who had once seemed so respectful when he asked for Madison's hand in marriage, now caused her so much pain and even spoke ill of her as if she were a burden. What's more, there were suspicions of him having an affair. "I've noticed perfume on him lately. It's not like him, especially not a woman's scent. And his shirts have had a sweet smell when I've done the laundry," I shared with Madison. His late nights and early mornings suddenly seemed to make sense. "Madison, you've been incredibly strong through all of this, managing the house and taking care of Harper, All while dealing with your husband's infidelity, I praised her, overwhelmed with admiration for her resilience despite everything. Despite any disagreements, she's my daughter and family. Madison teared up quietly. The gentle autumn weather persisted, dry yet refreshing compared to summer. Madison's due date was approaching. I focused on pampering both Madison and Harper, nurturing their emotional and physical well-being. 6 months passed and spring arrived. While I was preparing lunch one day, my phone rang unexpectedly. I paused to answer it. The caller was Stephen. "Yes, this is Scarlett," I answered cautiously. "Hey, what's going on? Your house is gone." Stephen's voice sounded bewildered on the other end of the line. "Finally noticed, have you?" I replied, a hint of amusement in my voice. Stephen had arrived to pick up Madison, Harper, and the newborn only to find the house demolished and an empty lot with a "for sale" sign. The move and demolition had been completed a month ago, and Stephen seemed to have just realized the situation, prompting his panicked call to me. "We've moved. You left Madison, Harper, and the baby in my care for half a year. Have you been aware of that?" I questioned pointedly. "Yeah, I've come to pick them up now." "Where are you?" Stephen asked urgently. "Come to pick them up? Unfortunately, we've relocated to a secure apartment. There's no point in telling you where. I'm not considering returning them to you," I responded firmly. "Don't joke with me. I told my parents I'd bring Harper and the baby over. Give me back the kids at least," Stephen insisted, his tone unsettling as he referred to the children almost as possessions. "That's a promise you made on your own. It doesn't concern us, so we won't comply. I'm busy now, so if you don't mind." Just then, the baby started crying, the sound audible through the phone. Stephen seemed to react softly, saying, "Oh." Ignoring him, I hung up and hurried to change the baby's diaper in the next room. I could hear Madison's phone conversation faintly. "Yes, hello, what?" Her voice carried a hint of frustration, likely arguing with Stephen. Soon after, Harper emerged from her room, looking scared. "Mom is angry," she whispered anxiously. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything will be fine," I assured her, pulling her into a comforting hug. About 10 minutes later, the commotion quieted down, and Madison joined us. It was Stephen. He was demanding our new address, but I refused outright. "I don't care if he wants to show Harper and the baby to his parents," she sighed, reflecting on his persistence. "But maybe it was for the best," he called. I finally got to say what I've been wanting to. Regarding the lawyer? The issue at hand was Stephen's infidelity. During that call, I informed him that we would proceed with a divorce through a lawyer, and I would also seek alimony due to his affair. I also sent proof of his infidelity to his father, Madison recounted calmly. Over the past 6 months, we had hired a detective to investigate Stephen's behavior, and the evidence confirmed his unfaithfulness. With 2 young children to consider, Madison couldn't overlook this betrayal. Stephen was caught off guard by Madison's knowledge of his affair and was visibly shaken. He must have been pale with shock when he realized his parents were aware of the evidence. Outraged, he exclaimed, "How could you do this?" "But those were my terms," I replied firmly. Given his parents' strict nature, I anticipated they would not take his actions lightly. Madison's prediction proved correct. A meeting was arranged with Stephen's parents to discuss his conduct. During the meeting, they apologized to Madison and accepted the divorce proceedings. Stephen's father, despite his son being a potential future company president, expressed his anger and disappointment, stating that a man who cheats on his wife and neglects his children is unworthy of such responsibilities. As a result, he dismissed Stephen from his position within the company. In the end, Stephen faced serious consequences. He lost his position and gave up custody of his children, allowing Madison and me to raise them. He was required to pay compensation and child support, but struggled due to debts accrued from supporting his affair partner. Although he found another job, the salary was modest, forcing him to move into a small, inexpensive apartment. After losing his shot at becoming president, Stephen's affair partner callously abandoned him. It became clear she was more interested in his title than him as a person. Despite multiple attempts to reconnect and reconcile, Madison cut off contact with Stephen, and their divorce was finalized smoothly. Madison became a single parent, but found strength in raising her children who thrived under her care. Despite the rift, Stephen's father, feeling remorseful, continued to support Harper and her sibling beyond the agreed child support. Despite Madison and my initial refusals, he insisted, and we accepted it for the children's future. We also kept Stephen's parents updated with photos and videos of their grandchildren, and occasionally video called when schedules allowed. Seeing Harper and her sibling grow up brought joy to Stephen's parents, who cherished their role as grandparents deeply. Harper's days at prep school were filled with joy, especially with her mud and sand playtime with friends. One sunny afternoon, I arrived to pick her up and noticed she was clutching a rolled-up piece of drawing paper. "What's that, Harper?" I asked curiously. She hesitated shyly before replying, "It's a picture of Mom." The preschool teacher had assigned them to draw portraits as gifts for their mothers that day. Although Harper was too bashful to show me the drawing right away, she eagerly rushed home and presented it to Madison. While I couldn't see the portrait myself, Madison was deeply moved and praised Harper's thoughtfulness. It was a touching moment that showcased Harper's growing individuality. Thinking about her future fills me with hope and excitement. Living together as a family of 4, experiencing this happiness, feels like nothing short of a miracle. I'm Kate, and I'm 58 years old. I work as a neurologist at a university hospital in France. Since my daughter is on a short study trip to America, I decided to take a long break. How many years has it been? Visiting the university hospital, where I used to work, brings back both happy and sad memories. While sitting at the cafe terrace I used to visit during breaks, drinking coffee, I realized that 18 years have passed. The view outside has changed a bit, but under the same clear blue sky, I suddenly remembered my ex-husband's words. I prefer a smart child born to a 23-year-old woman than a child born to an older woman. His unexpected words left me shocked. What do you mean by that? It's obvious. As a doctor, you know the risks of older pregnancies, right? Your statement isn't about maternal health or childbirth itself exactly. It's about the child's abilities. Why are you bringing this up now? You knew this from the start, didn't you? That's why we pursued fertility treatments. Well, that's true. I did want a child then. But things have changed. I don't understand. I truly didn't understand. As a doctor couple, me, a neurologist, and him, a plastic surgeon, we struggled with infertility for 2 years. Finally, at age 40, we conceived through fertility treatments. When I got pregnant, Noah, my ex-husband, was thrilled and became very protective until we reached a stable stage in the pregnancy. Friends, colleagues, and family joked that the real challenge would come after the baby was born. We were so happy, but within a few months, Noah said those shocking words. Did you really not realize? Huh? Didn't notice what? I was aware of what was happening outside the house. There was no way I hadn't noticed, but there was also the reality of our growing family. A few months later I began to think, this can't continue. I struggled to gather my courage, staying up late to wait for Noah to return home, trying to start a conversation many times. And on that day, I waited again. Welcome back. Oh, you're awake. Yeah, I wanted to talk. Whether Noah understood my feelings or not, his indifferent response was all I received. Hey, I got an invitation to attend the hospital's dad class today. Do you want to go? Huh? Apparently most husbands attend the class. I'm not going. Huh? I said I'm not going. I'm not interested. Not interested? I'm a doctor, you know. I've seen countless pediatric patients. I don't have a problem with kids, so isn't that enough? But raising our own child from infancy is completely different. Even though I'm a doctor, I have no idea about childbirth or parenting. It's beyond what I can imagine. That's your perspective. Mine is different. I'm fine, so I'm not going. End of discussion. Noah remained uninterested and exerted pressure, but I lacked the courage to continue. One of my colleagues mentioned she saw him. Cheating? She saw you recently in the city, arm in arm with a young girl, happily shopping in a department store. Oh, really? Was that person stalking me or something? No, she just happened to be there and saw you. But she decided to gossip and used the word cheating. If it's untrue, that's slander, right? Huh? That's not the point. That's exactly the point. You realize I'm being suspected, right? It's a story where no one knows if it's true or not. So is it a lie? Well, my clinic focuses on beauty treatments, so it mostly employs young women. Women can be competitive with each other, you know? To keep them happy, I offer meals, shopping, and relaxation to recognize their hard work at a popular clinic. So, you're doing the same with other staff, not just the person my colleague saw. You could say that. So, you're neglecting our family for that? Kate, think about this. Without those girls, the clinic wouldn't succeed. They contribute to our income, right? So, thanks to them, we can maintain our household. Calling it neglect seems a bit harsh, don't you think? Noah smirked as he spoke, making valid points but also saying hurtful things. What's relaxation anyway? Is it code for hotel escapades? My colleague mentioned seeing him entering a hotel with a woman. It's a hotel Noah often uses for business dinners. When I heard that, I felt it was damning, but I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. Maybe Noah had been hiding such activities since the early days of the clinic, focusing less on home once the money started coming in. After that, he seemed to hide less, spending less time at home. We're back to that initial suspicion. One day, as soon as he came home, he called out to my bedroom. Come here. I opened the door to find a flashy young woman sitting on the sofa, smiling faintly. Ah, is she the woman my colleague mentioned? My muttering caught Noah's attention immediately. So this girl here is going to be my official wife from now on, and she's already pregnant. I see. So what happens to me? Divorce, obviously. You can't just divorce me so easily. Easy or not, I have to take responsibility for this child. And what about your responsibility to me? Money. I'll give you more than enough. There will be a divorce settlement anyway. I could even give some money to that unborn child. It's coming from your old-fashioned womb. I'll provide enough to cover any shortfalls, so just hurry up, sign it, and disappear. With that, a pre-filled divorce form was placed on the table in front of me. The woman smirked, muttering disgusting under her breath as she looked at me. Being in the same space as these people was unbearable, and above all, I realized that Noah could no longer be considered my husband. From there, things moved quickly. We agreed to involve lawyers and decided that I would hold on to the divorce form. I couldn't bear to live in the same house with him anymore. So I quickly packed my essentials into a suitcase and left the house. 18 years later, returning to America, I never expected a chance encounter. Lost in thought, I noticed a figure approaching nearby. Just as I turned to look, I heard a voice I never wanted to hear again. Kate. It was Noah. It's been a while. Unable to ignore the greeting, I replied calmly. As he approached, he chuckled and spoke again. So you're back from France with your tail between your legs? You went to France, right? Feeling the pressure and came back to rely on your alma mater. His mocking smile revealed his true nature, leaving a sinking feeling in my stomach. Just a regular homecoming. My child had things to do in America, so we're here together today. So that child from back then, I see. Why are you here together? Is that child sick or something? His words left me stunned. I prefer a smart child born to a 23-year-old woman than a child born to an older woman. Noah's hurtful words echoed in my mind, and my heart sank once again as I struggled to respond. Footsteps approached from behind. Mom, who is he? Grace's voice brought me back to the present. She looked at Noah cautiously, and upon seeing her, Noah glanced at me suspiciously. Smirking, I said to him, "This is Grace, my daughter, and biologically, yours too." My words left Noah wide-eyed in shock. It wasn't surprising. Grace was tall, beautiful, and carried herself with elegance. Plus, if Noah had been keeping tabs, he might have heard the rumors about her. Carefully choosing his words, Noah asked me, "Wait, could she be Grace from the surgical research lab?" Bingo, Grace is here for a temporary stint in the surgical research lab. Noah was speechless, and I couldn't help but laugh. The child he had abandoned before birth had grown into an exceptional medical student after 18 years. Moreover, Noah had assumed that a child born from an older pregnancy would be less capable or have health issues. He could never have imagined that she would become such a talented young woman. Surprised, aren't you? The woman you discarded, who you used to criticize about her age during pregnancy, has turned out like this. And Grace is even skipping grades. She's a second-year medical student at just 18. She's already graduated from university. I couldn't help but smile at Noah's clueless reaction. Don't you know about the education system in France? Shut up. With all your knowledge, I thought you'd be aware. Noah reluctantly apologized, biting his lip. His pride was immense. Even in our marriage, he would bristle at any criticism from me. Now approaching 60, it seemed little had changed. Quietly, I continued, Grace graduated from high school at 15 and college at 17. She's worked so hard, despite me being a single parent. She's an exceptional daughter, both inside and out. She's my pride and joy. I beamed proudly, but Noah, clearly frustrated, threw out a statement that demanded attention. You must have used your authority as a doctor to pull strings, right? Maybe you're even a professor over there. With that kind of power, you could manipulate anything. High school, college, even medical school. But don't think I'm like you. Is that so? Is that your version? Sending your child to low-ranking high schools, struggling to get into any university, let alone dental school. You probably managed to finagle your child into some countryside medical school, right? How did you find out? I ran into someone who knew you from junior high and high school. Heard quite a bit. Caught off guard, Noah seemed desperate to know who it was. Who was it? He asked eagerly, almost childlike. Annoyed, I ignored him and took a sip of the coffee in front of me. Its familiar taste eased my troubled heart a little. One of the hospitals affiliated with the university where Grace was accepted is managed by an American. He seemed eager for me to start working at the university hospital right away, but I was pregnant at the time. So he suggested I teach at the university and work part-time at the clinic. It turns out he knew about my situation and asked about Noah. I didn't know him personally, but he mentioned hearing about me and my husband. I've heard rumors too about how being wealthy lets you push people around or play games with others. Noah's family were countryside landowners, wealthy and influential. As an only child, he fit the stereotype of a typical rich kid who could do as he pleased. Who told you all this? Tell me. It doesn't matter who it was. Your reputation precedes you, right? Your behavior has been talked about among your peers and acquaintances, who said it doesn't change the truth. To silence him from further protests, I added firmly, that person warned me that I was being used. Huh? At first, I didn't understand, but after listening carefully it all became clear. You, coming from the countryside, and me, living in the city. When we first met at our new workplace, I didn't know anything about your background. That ignorance was convenient for you, wasn't it? So you figured it out. Yeah, that's right. We were both new at work, and I had just moved from the countryside where no one knew me. You, being new too, didn't know about my troubled past or my character. You were convenient for me. What's wrong with that? Finally, Noah admitted it, and I confronted him directly. But that's not all, is it? Huh? You wanted a talented child, a child who could compensate for your own insecurities, right? So you wanted me. No, you wanted my position in genetics, didn't you? You desired my successful career in genetics, which are the opposite of yours, didn't you? What do you mean by opposite? Don't say foolish things in front of the child. No, you shouldn't speak that way in front of our child. Even after admitting everything, he tried to protect his pride. His petty behavior disgusted me. Don't worry, Grace knows everything. Huh, everything. Everything, including how you abandoned both Grace and me in pursuit of your ideal child, and your entire history. What? Did you spill everything? I simply stated the truth, how you disappeared before Grace was born. Trying to deceive Grace, who is so perceptive, won't work. I don't understand, Noah's voice echoed loudly in the quiet cafe terrace. Then Grace, who had been silent until then, spoke up. Don't you think it's pathetic? Huh? I'm asking, don't you think it's pathetic? Why should I care what you think, you little brat? Even to someone you see as a brat, your actions are pathetic. Noah was clearly taken aback by his daughter's words. He clenched his teeth, face turning red with embarrassment. Grace continued, observing him calmly. As my mother said, I know everything. Not just about the past, but also about what's happening now. Huh? I never expected you to beg the professor who's looking after me. I also heard the clinic went bankrupt. What? Due to repeated failures in plastic surgeries, a decline in customers, embezzlement, and failed investments. It probably all began 18 years ago. How dare you say such things? It started when you abandoned my mother and chose someone else. Or perhaps it started when you started making easy money at the clinic and got involved with someone blinded by money. Their presence turned you into a greedy monster and led to your downfall. Grace's words struck Noah hard, making his face even redder and his lips tremble. Why don't you admit it? You're a terrible person, someone who ruins lives. Isn't this just karma catching up with you? Can't you see that? Wait, what? You think I ruin lives? Because of our breakup, Kate became a professor in France, and now you're going to medical school at 18. It's all because of me, isn't it? What? Are you kidding me? Grace's voice remained steady and clear. It's not because of you, that's just how things turned out. Sure, the divorce might have been a trigger, but my acceptance into university right after was the result of my mother's hard work up until then. And my effort to attend medical school early is also because of her constant support. She's always been someone who works hard and cares for others, and that's why good things come to her. But for someone who easily discards others and ends up ruining their workplace, there's a sad reality waiting where they'll have to rely on their dwindling pride. I saw a new side of Grace in that moment. While we've had heated discussions before due to differences, I'd never seen her raise her voice or express anger towards someone. Though I've had my moments of heightened emotion, quietly absorbing feedback from others, including Grace herself, I never expected her to see me that way or have those thoughts. Yet even faced with Grace's undeniable reasoning, Noah struggled to control his emotions. What? You wouldn't even exist if it weren't for me. Everything is thanks to me, right? How can you say that to your own child? I intervened, my voice tinged with anger and sadness. It's okay, Mom. It doesn't bother me. I'm grateful for being born, but technically, it's thanks to my grandparents who supported you all those years. Noah clearly hadn't expected his parents to be brought into the discussion. He froze, his expression stunned. I kept in touch with your parents even after we separated, and they shown concern for Grace. But you wouldn't know that because you cut ties with them after our divorce. What? You're still in contact with my parents? Did you manipulate them against me to gain allies? No, Noah. Your grandparents disowned you because you cheated on me and remarried. You barely graduated from medical school with financial help, struggled to attain your medical license after numerous private lessons, and barely held a mediocre position at a general hospital after an additional year under senior doctor's shadows. Unable to accept this due to your pride, you convinced your parents to open a cosmetic clinic for you. However, you became enamored with the plastic surgery trend, resumed womanizing during your residency, and started hiring based on your personal interests. It became a harem-like environment, culminating in impregnating a nurse over 2 decades younger, abandoning your family, and ultimately causing the collapse of the clinic built by your parents. What more could your grandparents possibly do for you? Overwhelmed by Grace's relentless recounting of Noah's troubled history, delivered flawlessly, Noah could only stammer incomprehensible words in agony. As he struggled to make sense of the situation, a strange calm seemed to settle over him, prompting him to say something outrageous. "So why don't you connect us, huh? I heard you were asking around in the lab earlier. After my clinic closed, I've been struggling to find work. I imagine you're facing challenges too, reaching out to your mother's former workplace for help. Everyone's been distant. If you, the talented daughter of Kate, who is respected and trusted despite our unfortunate split, were to offer assistance to your reunited father, surely they'd lend a hand, right?" Noah lamented like a tragic figure, making such unusual requests, while Grace and I exchanged knowing glances, sighing with pity. "Crying to a child you abandoned? That's pretty pathetic and uncool, isn't it?" "Shut up. You don't know anything about me." "I don't know, don't want to know, and have no interest in knowing. I have no interest in someone who, despite being a doctor, lacks empathy, only thinks of themselves, and ends up causing medical mishaps. And it's quite odd to come seeking sympathy from Grace. Don't you have a talented child at home? Ask them for help. Mine is impossible. I only managed to get her into a decent private women's college through connections and money." "Huh, you solved it with money again, just like always. Money can fix anything for you." Noah, stirred up by his past being brought up, retorted with a red face, "But fundamentally, things shouldn't be solved with money. It's wrong to decide someone's fate with money. Sometimes even money can't fix things, you know. Did you know that one of the victims of your medical mishaps was a relative of my professor? I believe it was my mentor, Professor Ted's niece. She had surgery at your clinic, and there were complications with her facial muscles. Could it be that there are issues that money couldn't solve? It seems like you closed the clinic to avoid dealing with inconvenient cases that money couldn't fix, huh? But you know, people in the medical field are connected in various ways. Like me, I've ended up connecting with your colleagues and friends." Whether my words were getting through to him or not, Noah's face turned pale, and he started sweating profusely, freezing in place with trembling eyeballs. "It's okay, Noah. Everything will unfold just as you fear. Are you so scared that you can't even speak? This is your mess to deal with now. You never cared about anyone else's well-being for your own gain, right? Just try to keep that dark spirit of yours in check, at least." "Wait, am I really? Won't someone eventually come for you? You seem so focused on securing your job that you haven't noticed." "You're kidding, right? This can't be some made-up story. You won't need to look for work anymore. Even if you manage to find something, you won't be able to work anyway. Haha, you're delusional. If that's what you believe, then so be it. Enjoy your time with your family for now." With those final words, I gently touched Grace's arm, signaling it was time to go. Grace returned the touch with a soft smile. After about 2 months of intense medical studies in America, she returned to France. America was amazing. The food was delicious, people were kind, professors and seniors were respectful, and the discussions were fascinating. I might consider returning to America in the future. Grace seemed to have gained new perspectives and emotions from her deep immersion in American culture during her study abroad, unlike her occasional visits before. "That's great to hear. Let me know if you need anything. I should also thank the professors." "Sure, I'll keep that in mind," Grace replied, wrinkling her nose at a sweet French juice she hadn't tasted in a while. "Oh, by the way, did he get caught?" "Yay." During Grace's time studying abroad, Noah was arrested. The scandal surrounding his failed cosmetic clinic, which resulted in multiple medical mishaps involving staff members, dominated headlines on American news and variety shows daily. Grace must have been aware of it all. Grace returned from her studies with unexpected outcomes. Now 18, she has always been mature and hardworking. While utilizing one's talents is crucial, as someone with over 30 years of medical experience, I deeply believe that medicine must be practiced with compassion. Medicine is about improving lives, and people are at the heart of it all. In the coming years, Grace is bound to grow significantly as a person. As both a parent and a seasoned medical professional, I will quietly support Grace from the sidelines, sometimes walking alongside her. This journey will undoubtedly be a lifelong endeavor. Someone called me from a number I didn't recognize. Who could it be? I wondered aloud as I picked up the phone and said, "Hello." The voice on the other end responded, "It's me, Kevin, your son. Look, I get that you and Dad aren't together anymore, but you need to start acting like a mom. I'm in high school now, and I can't keep dealing with your problems forever, okay?" Confused, I asked, "What do you mean? Why are you calling me?" Kevin's tone turned sharp. "I'm telling you, you need to pay my child support and school fees, and do it soon. It's because of what you did, cheating and all, and now you're trying to get money from Dad. You're out of your mind." His words made me angry. Kevin, who is this? I never had any children. What? Are you kidding me? Are you in denial? He shot back. Stop playing games. Kevin must think I'm joking, but I'm serious. Like I said before, Kevin isn't my biological son. About 14 years ago, I was married to my ex-husband for about 3 years. During that time, our relationship didn't change much, and I thought we got along pretty well. We often went out together on our days off. My ex-husband had a busy job that required him to travel for work about half of the month. I knew about this from the beginning, so I wasn't too worried about it. The only thing that bothered me was the topic of children. Before we got married, I really wanted to have kids soon. We both had our own plans and priorities though. Even though I thought having kids was the right thing for us, I didn't want to push him if he wasn't ready. So I was patient and didn't rush him into anything. After 3 years of marriage, my ex-husband hadn't mentioned having children, which started to bother me. Finally, I brought it up one day. What do you think about starting a family now? 3 years have passed, and waiting longer could make it harder for us to have kids. Yeah, but work is really hectic right now. When will it not be hectic? Seriously? You've been saying that forever, and we're still in the same place. I understand work is busy, but if you keep using that excuse, it makes me wonder if there's more going on than just work. What do you mean by that? I haven't done anything wrong, I said, feeling confused. The conversation felt strange. I didn't suspect my ex-husband of cheating, but I was concerned that things might start to seem suspicious. However, his reaction made me think otherwise. He's keeping something from me, I thought to myself. With that in mind, I decided to investigate. As I looked into his words, actions, and his behavior when I questioned him, I discovered the truth about what he was really doing on his business trips. It wasn't just cheating, it was much worse. My husband was living a double life. Half the month he was with me, and the other half he was with another family. The most shocking discovery was that this other family included a child. That child turned out to be Kevin. Did you just call me? Kevin was only about 2 years old then, too young to fully grasp what was happening. It was a situation with mixed feelings, fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. Knowing someone would get hurt, I decided to talk to the other woman later. She seemed to have heard about me from my ex-husband, nodding slightly when she saw me. From our first meeting, she didn't come off as particularly friendly. Amidst the tension, we quickly got to the point. I brought up everything that troubled me, whether it was acceptable for my ex-husband to lead a double life, and whose child Kevin really was. Without any hint of regret, she calmly answered, Carly, confidently stating she was Kevin's mother. It seemed my ex-husband had kept this a secret from me, but she had no qualms about it. I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the situation. Finally, I asked her what her plans were moving forward. I'm not planning to change anything in my life now. I'm fine with how things are, she replied. Besides, I don't think he's interested in having more children. Why do you say that? When I told him I was pregnant with Kevin, he didn't seem happy. He said it would have been better if the timing had been different. So my pregnancy was more of an accident. Otherwise, I don't think he would have wanted a child. But he told me he loved kids. Doesn't that mean he wanted a child with you? She smiled faintly and said, Isn't that strange? If that were true, why did I, who wasn't keen on having a child, end up giving birth, while you, who wanted a child, didn't even conceive? Can he truly say he loves children? Well, I'm sure he said he loved kids, but maybe it was just something he said to impress you. Perhaps he used it as an excuse to get close to you. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. It felt like she had hit upon something true, and it made me question whether my ex-husband had been sincere about wanting children despite his actions saying otherwise. In the end, I started to believe the other woman was right. I felt powerless, like the best I could do was seek compensation. She seemed calm about it, which only made me feel worse. A few days later, I filled out divorce papers and handed them to my husband, telling him I would also be seeking compensation. He probably heard about it from the other woman. My husband accepted everything without questioning me. What was the point of it all? Why did this man even marry me? There was only one thing I couldn't stop wondering about. On the day I packed up and left, I asked my ex-husband, Why did you marry me? I just don't understand. I'm not sure either. I often wonder why we got married in the first place. If we didn't even know, maybe we shouldn't have. Yeah, maybe. If we hadn't, you wouldn't have to deal with a divorce now. But hey, you married me because you liked me, right? We both made a mistake. Let's move on to a better life now. Thank you for everything. Same to you. I'll pray that I don't choose someone like you in my next life, I said, and then we got divorced. I became single again, changed jobs, and moved to a different state, aiming for a fresh start. It was a valuable experience for me to approach everything with a new mindset. My ex-husband occasionally contacted me for paperwork, but we never discussed our current lives. Maybe he wasn't interested. He had his own life, and I had mine. About 10 years passed without us keeping in touch. Then unexpectedly I received a call from Kevin. I was curious about the reason, but it turned out he was asking for child support and school fees. Kevin is the child born from my ex-husband's affair. Naturally, I have no legal obligation to pay, but he wouldn't accept that. Don't you feel ashamed as a mother? If that's the case, then don't have any children, he kept repeating. It was frustrating to hear the same thing over and over. I didn't want to escalate things, so I waited for him to calm down. Finally, after a few minutes, I managed to speak up. Can I say something? There are a few things I need to clarify. How did you get my number? It's obvious. I got it from Dad. Our family hasn't been doing well lately, and things seem strange. Eventually, we couldn't afford tuition and other expenses. Because of that, I had to start working part-time. Dad said it was all your fault. That's when I started hearing different things about you, Mom, that you cheated on Dad and left without fulfilling your promises to pay. Until then, I hadn't asked much about the divorce, but now it all made sense. It's all your fault, he concluded. I see. I finally understood why he was so angry. If what he said was true, any kid would be upset. But my ex-husband had lied to Kevin, and unbelievably, he had turned Kevin against me. Hearing this made me furious. It's a hassle for my ex-husband to reappear in my life now that we're divorced. However, it's also heartbreaking to see Kevin being misled like this. From my point of view, he's a stranger, but I couldn't just ignore the situation and walk away, saying it's not my problem. After remarrying and having children with my current husband, I felt a responsibility as a parent to do the right thing. Kevin, now 16, seemed old enough to hear the truth. Kevin, everything I'm about to tell you is the truth. If you need proof, like a DNA test, I can arrange it. Can you listen to me for now? I asked. Yeah, Kevin replied hesitantly. As I revealed each detail, he grew increasingly agitated. If what you're saying is true, why did Dad have me call you earlier? Kevin asked, confused. Kevin, you mentioned you're working part-time. What are you doing with the money? I inquired. Saving it for me. Our family's been struggling financially lately, and I wanted to help out with debts. High school isn't mandatory anymore, so I don't need much, he explained earnestly. You're such a responsible kid. But have you ever wondered why, with that money, you can't cover your tuition and expenses? Well, sometimes my phone bill payment is late. I think Dad might be short on money. Is he working right now? He's working. He goes to the office regularly. I see. I have a bad feeling about this. Could it be that my ex-husband is using Kevin's money? With that suspicion in mind, I decided to look into my ex-husband's activities once more. Kevin, can you give me about 3 weeks? Haha, sure, that's fine. And please don't tell Dad about what we talked about on the phone, okay? Okay, I won't. So I decided to investigate my ex-husband further. I hired a private investigator and waited anxiously for the results. Some might say I'm going too far, but everything I do is for Kevin's sake. I wouldn't go to such lengths for anyone else. Even if people think I'm crazy, I don't care. Would I abandon a child who looks like he's on the verge of collapsing right in front of me? Absolutely not. I refuse to become that kind of person. Above all, I felt a deep anger towards my ex-husband for deceiving Kevin. Filled with this anger, I waited for the private investigator's report for 3 weeks. When the results finally arrived, I was shocked and furious. It turned out my ex-husband wasn't currently employed full-time. He was working as a temporary worker and had recently been laid off. Instead of actively seeking new opportunities, he was spending his time idly drinking or playing cards. Kevin believed his dad was working because he often dressed in a suit, but the truth was he was unemployed and not actively searching for a job. What angered me most about my ex-husband was how quickly he acted remorseful in front of Kevin. Seeing his dad like that, Kevin felt sorry and willingly handed over all his part-time job earnings. Little did Kevin know, his money was being squandered on gambling and drinking by his father. This situation couldn't be ignored. First and foremost, I needed to take action to help Kevin. With that in mind, I called my ex-mother-in-law, relieved that I hadn't deleted her number from my phone book. Hello. Oh, Ava. It's been a while. How have you been? Long time no see. What's on your mind? Is everything all right? I explained the current situation to my mother-in-law. During my marriage, she and her sister-in-law had been at odds with me. After the divorce, we hadn't kept in touch. However, it seemed she had heard about my divorce and understood that I had moved on with my life, so she wasn't upset at all. I see. I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier. I thought it would be better coming from him, but he was cheating, wasn't he? My mother-in-law's voice took on a somber tone. As I shared all the details, she let out an angry exclamation over the phone. I understand now. It all makes sense. I wasn't informed about the birth because he had a child with someone else. He brought Kevin to see me, but I was told not to contact you because you needed space after giving birth. Some people go through mental instability or even illness during that time, so I respected your privacy. When I found out about the divorce, I felt sorry, but I didn't know how to reach out to you. Is that right? Now Kevin visits occasionally, and it brings me joy. Regardless of how he came into this world, he's not to blame. I want to support him and be there for him in the future. You've always been understanding. I'm actually relieved to hear you say that. I called because I wanted to ask you something about Kevin. Could you and your husband help raise Kevin together? Of course. Kevin worked so hard to earn money from his part-time job, only for it to be wasted on gambling. I think it's crucial to have a serious talk with him about that. I trust you to handle it, but I believe Kevin is sacrificing his future to support his father. Please let him live freely with you and his grandfather. My mother-in-law assured me that she would take care of Kevin, and thus his immediate situation was resolved. Now it was time to confront my ex-husband. I decided to contact him and arrange a meeting. I was furious at him for deceiving me. When I arrived at the cafe at the agreed-upon time and saw my ex-husband, he looked noticeably worn out. It's unusual for you to reach out to me, and wow, you look older. Anyway, what about Kevin? So you already know. Let's get straight to the point. Why did you have Kevin call me? What were you trying to achieve? I was desperate. Money's been tight lately. I lost my job due to a fraud accusation, and Kevin's mother disappeared out of nowhere. It feels like everything's slipping away from me, but my mom and Kevin still think I'm employed. It's easy to fool them as long as I act remorseful. Kevin is your son, right? Doesn't it make you feel something? He's such a dutiful son, giving me money. You won't find a more devoted son than him. I understand now. I feel relieved hearing you say these things openly. Suddenly, 3 people stood up from a nearby table and approached us. Huh? What's happening? You're truly despicable. We overheard everything just now. Even after all this time, your character hasn't changed. It's over for you. It was my mother-in-law, my aunt-in-law, and then Kevin. To convince everyone, they needed to see his true nature with their own eyes. My ex-husband started to visibly flounder, unable to find the right words. As everyone chastised him, he kept glancing at me, seemingly seeking help. But even if you make that face, it won't change anything. You need to accept responsibility for everything you've done and recognize how disgraceful your actions have been. And with that, the incident came to a close. Since then, my ex-husband faced criticism from my mother-in-law, aunt-in-law, and father-in-law. He was pushed to find work and eventually secured a job at a construction site through my father-in-law's connections. My father-in-law insisted it was to straighten him out. Moreover, he arranged for child support to be deducted directly from his wages. This ensured that Kevin's tuition and other school expenses were covered. Kevin has since been living with his grandmother. While I remain deeply disappointed in my ex-husband, he has apparently shown kindness to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Kevin continues to be a kind-hearted child through it all. I'm still uncertain if my actions were entirely justified, but there's no denying things have improved. My greatest wish is for Kevin to find happiness. As my mother-in-law wisely said, a child born into this world bears no guilt. My name is Alina. I'm 23 years old and in my last year of college, aiming to become a journalist. But today, instead of looking forward to graduation, I'm stuck in a terrible situation. We just buried my dad less than a day ago. My dad, Martin, was always traveling for work, but he still made me feel loved. Now, the house feels so empty without him. It's a constant reminder of the gap he left behind. As I stand in the entrance of our home, still feeling numb from the funeral, my mom, Claudia, and my sister, Victoria, quickly share their plans. Their words hit me hard, like a loud, sad bell marking the end of our family's togetherness. We're going to sell this house, Claudia says, her eyes cold despite her pretending to be sad. Start looking for a new place, Elena. You need to move out soon. I can hardly believe what I'm hearing. Before I can even process my dad's death, my mom and sister are already thinking about money and what they can gain from it. It feels like a huge betrayal. You don't think you're entitled to anything, do you? Victoria taunts, with her boyfriend, Jan, laughing beside her. Their cruel amusement makes me furious. I shouldn't be hearing these words, especially now when the pain is so fresh. I never understood their greed and obsession with wealth and appearances. I was always the odd one out in the family, too serious and studious. Elena the dreamer, they used to mock. And now, faced with their scheming, all the years of indifference and mockery boil over. You're the worst, I shout, unable to hold back my anger. I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you. The bell rings, cutting through my outburst. Annoyed at the interruption, I wipe away my angry tears and open the door. A man in a dark suit stands there, holding a briefcase, and his face looks vaguely familiar. My condolences, he says solemnly. May I come in? Who is this stranger, showing up at the worst possible time with such a serious tone? I'm not ready to deal with anyone else right now, but something in his eyes tells me this isn't just a courtesy visit. I step aside and let him in, wondering what this means for our already fragile family. The echo of my father's laughter used to fill our home, softening the sting of my mother and sister's harsh words. Now the walls seem to close in on me, mixing memories of their hurtful comments with the emptiness his death has left. I always found comfort in my studies, hoping they would lead me to a meaningful life, away from the shallow desires that drove Claudia and Victoria. But as I sit at the dining table, it's hard to focus on anything but the void Martin's passing has created. Silent meals have become the new normal since Dad got sick and passed away. Victoria is always on her phone, and Claudia flips through high-fashion magazines, completely detached from our reality. Their latest plan to sell our home and leave me behind was the final blow to our family bonds. They seemed so eager to chase their dreams of luxury condos and designer lives that nothing else mattered. Dad had been our anchor, and I'd hoped for at least a semblance of unity after he was gone. But now, seeing their blatant opportunism, the illusion of family was shattered, and something inside me snapped. I was tired of being the outsider, the one who cared. I was ready to walk away from it all. Lost in these thoughts, the doorbell rings, a sound that now only means more disruption and bad news. At the door stands a man from my father's past, someone whose ties to our family had faded over time. "Good evening," he greets me. "I need to speak with you about your father's affairs." His formal tone feels out of place in our messy living room, a stark reminder of our family's discord. I nod and gesture for him to sit down. Claudia and Victoria peek out from the kitchen, their curious faces showing irritation. The man pulls out a stack of papers from his briefcase, his expression serious. "I'm Mr. Adams, your father's attorney. He entrusted me with his will and some final instructions," he explains, adjusting his glasses with a seriousness that hints at significant news. Claudia leans forward, visibly intrigued, while Victoria tries to appear nonchalant but stays close by. As Mr. Adams prepares to speak, I steel myself for what's coming next, unsure of the impact it will have but certain our family dynamics are on the brink of change once again. The room fills with tension as Mr. Adams clears his throat and unfolds the document containing my father Martin's final wishes. Claudia and Victoria lean forward eagerly, their attempts at composure slipping since his passing. "In accordance with your father's wishes," Mr. Adams begins, "I am here to read the will and begin the process of carrying out his instructions." His gaze moves between each of us, perhaps assessing our readiness for what he's about to reveal. I can't shake a sense of dread. Years of living under my mother and sister's expectations had conditioned me to expect little and prepare for disappointment. Yet as the attorney starts to speak, it becomes clear that our expectations are about to be upended. "To my daughter Elena, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the family home and all accumulated savings and investments." The room falls into a hushed silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock. Mr. Adams continues reading, but his words barely register with me. All I can hear is the pounding of my heart and a buzzing in my ears. It can't be right. There must be some mistake. Me? I manage to stammer, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. But why? Victoria pushes her chair back abruptly, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and anger. Claudia, equally stunned, sits frozen, her mouth opening and closing silently. Jen, who had been quietly lingering in the background, steps forward as if to comfort or perhaps restrain Victoria. "This has to be some kind of joke, right?" Jan demands, but Mr. Adams only solemnly shakes his head. "There's no mistake," he assures us. Martin was very clear in his wishes. He believed that Elena, with her principles and dedication, would best honor his legacy and manage his assets responsibly. Claudia finds her voice, her disbelief turning to anger. "But what about us?" she demands sharply, her voice shaking with fury. "Are we supposed to get nothing while she gets everything?" The question lingers in the air, thick with resentment from my mother and sister. I'm speechless, caught between the weight of this unexpected responsibility and the hurt of their obvious greed. Mr. Adams looks at me. Martin had his reasons, which he believed would become clear in time. Right now, we need to discuss the next steps and the details of the estate. As Mr. Adams speaks, I can't help but wonder what my father saw in me, what trust he had placed in my hands, and how I could ever live up to it amidst the wreckage of our family unity. The silence following Mr. Adams's revelation feels as heavy as the sorrow I felt at my father's funeral. Claudia and Victoria's anger fills the room, crashing against my shock like relentless waves against a cliff. For a moment, no one says anything. We're frozen in place, the weight of my father's will slicing through the air like a chill wind. "My reasons," Mr. Adams continues, addressing me directly, "are explained in a personal letter your father left for you, Elena. I am to give it to you after we finish here." Victoria's voice breaks the silence. "There must be some mistake," she protests, her words echoing off the walls, igniting a conflict I have no desire to engage in. Jan puts a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her, but her determination remains unyielding. How can she just inherit everything? Victoria's tone rises sharply, incredulous. "And what about us? Are we suddenly strangers he's decided to abandon after everything we've done for him? She wields her words like a weapon, her disbelief escalating into a crescendo of frustration. Claudia's shocked facade gives way to anger. Exactly. There must be some provision for this, some oversight or option to challenge it. This is absurd. Her hands tighten on the chair's arms, her knuckles turning white. I finally speak up, my voice weak even to my own ears. I don't understand. Why would Dad do this? What was he thinking? My mind races with unanswered questions, all leading back to a man I now realize I may never have truly known. Mr. Adams takes off his glasses, rubbing his nose before replying. Martin had his reasons and he wanted you to understand them, in his own words. As for Claudia and Victoria, he turns to them, you have the option to contest the will if you choose. Though Martin's intentions were clear, and his mental soundness when drafting it is well documented. The room erupts into chaos once again, voices overlapping as Claudia and Victoria express their anger and confusion, scrambling to devise a plan. I barely register their words. My thoughts are fixated on the unopened letter, a final message from my father that rests ominously on the table. Taking a deep breath, I reach for it. The paper feels weightless yet heavy in my hands. Unfolding the folds, I prepare to read the words of a man who chose to speak beyond the grave rather than in life, a man who has bequeathed me an inheritance that feels more like a poisoned chalice than a gift of blessings. Alone in my room, with the door closed tight, I unfold the letter with hands that won't stop shaking. Each crease seems to whisper my father's voice, and as his written words emerge, I brace myself for the understanding they bring. Dearest Alina, it starts in his familiar handwriting. As you read this, I am sorry. Sorry I can't say these things to you in person. Sorry for leaving you with a burden no parent should pass to their child. His apology, immediate and heartfelt, cuts through the legal complexities and stark revelations of moments ago. I take a deep breath, finding solace in the scent of ink on paper. Your strength, your discipline, and your vision for a better world have never gone unnoticed by me. In you I saw the promise of a future built on honesty and integrity, far from the grasp of greed. The paper quivers in my grip, stirred not by a draft through the old window, but by the flood of emotions it releases. I continue reading, eyes fixed on the page. Elena, I have not been blind to the dynamics in our household. Your patience and hard work in the face of neglect from your mother and sister have been both my sorrow and my pride. Entrusting you with my entire estate is my attempt to reconcile the unfair burdens you've had to bear. With each sentence, my father weaves a tapestry of his unspoken observations and quiet support. The man who often seemed distant had been watching closely, understanding more than he let on. My only wish is that this inheritance grants you the freedom and resources to pursue the dreams that burn brightly within you. Don't feel obligated to mend what was broken long before you could make a difference. Live the life you deserve, my Elena. Folding the letter, I hold it against my chest, feeling the love etched in ink by a father who recognized his daughter's selfless sacrifices. A surge of determination mingled with the grief that had shadowed me since his passing, washes over me. Leaving the sanctuary of my room, I re-enter the tempest of my fractured family. Mr. Adams meets my gaze with a silent query as I join them. Claudia's stare is sharp and fixed on me, while Victoria paces like a caged animal, her earlier anger now tinged with desperation. It's time we discuss what comes next, I declare, my voice steadier than I feel. Claudia scoffed. What happens next is that we challenge this absurdity. Victoria nodded fiercely. You can't just take everything, Elena. We deserve our fair share. Mr. Adams intervened. Challenging the will would be a lengthy and costly process with no guaranteed outcome. Martin's wishes are clear and well within his rights to enforce. With my father's heartfelt words weighing heavily in my thoughts, I faced them. The family that had never quite felt like a family. It wasn't my decision, but it was his, and I intend to respect it. Tension gripped us all like chains, but amidst the turmoil, one truth remained resolute. I would fulfill my duty, uphold my father's wishes, and perhaps in doing so, forge my own path towards a better future. In the days that followed, our home became a battleground of eerie silences and explosive arguments. Victoria and Claudia scoured legal avenues, consulting lawyers and searching for any loophole to contest the will. They clung stubbornly to the belief that they were entitled to Martin's legacy, viewing it more as their rightful inheritance than a reflection of a man's lifetime of work. Despite their persistent efforts, Mr. Adams remained steadfast, a calm presence amid the storm. His reassurances were a source of solace as we navigated the complexities of settling the estate. The will is solid, Elena, he would remind me over cups of lukewarm coffee in the formal dining room. You don't need to be concerned about their threats. Yet despite Mr. Adams's confidence, guilt gnawed at me. Was it fair to accept everything while leaving my mother and sister with nothing? Intellectually, I understood my father had his reasons, but emotionally, I struggled with the lingering sense of familial duty, a desire to mend what was broken, even knowing it might be beyond repair. My days were consumed by preparing for legal challenges and diving into my father's financial affairs. The responsibility felt overwhelming, analyzing numbers, making decisions about properties and investments I had never known existed. Each task felt like navigating through thick fog, but I was determined to honor my father's trust and see it through. Amidst scrutinizing financial statements, my thoughts drifted to the life awaiting beyond these walls, how I could use this inheritance to forge a path that aligned with my values, how I could make a meaningful impact on the world. Amidst the escalating chaos, Claudia and Victoria's true colors emerged in bursts of pettiness and malice. Victoria impulsively claimed sentimental family heirlooms, while Claudia hinted at dark secrets that could tarnish Martin's reputation. Their tactics were aimed at undermining me, testing my resolve, but I had learned to navigate their emotional traps with caution. On a particularly tense evening, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken threats and icy stares, I reached my breaking point. Enough, I declared, the single word cutting through the tension like a blade. 3 pairs of eyes focused on me, uncertain, wary. I can't give you what Dad didn't leave for you, but I can help you start fresh somewhere else. Their shock was tangible, a sudden shift in the power dynamics they had been trying to manipulate. It won't be a life of luxury, but it will be a new beginning. Claudia's laughter cut through the air, devoid of humor. A consolation prize from our dear Elena. How generous. Her sarcasm stung, but I remained resolute, shielded by years of hardened resolve. Despite the bitterness hanging between us, I stood firm. It's not about winning or losing, it's a choice. Take it or leave it, but know this, I'm moving forward with or without your approval. Their response was a mixture of silence and reluctant nods, a fragile agreement born from the clash of self-interest and necessity. Retreating to my room, the weight of my father's letter in my pocket reminded me of the path ahead, one where I would navigate not just the inheritance, but also discover who I would become because of it. Days turned into weeks filled with meetings with Mr. Adams and navigating the complexities of managing my inheritance. Claudia and Victoria, begrudgingly accepting my offer, began their search for a more modest home. The tension eased somewhat, yet a coldness lingered in the air deeper than the approaching winter. It was a time of solitude amid chaos, the house growing emptier with each packed box and removed piece of furniture. I found solace in my father's study, a haven untouched by time, a capsule of the past where family tensions once simmered beneath the surface of daily life. The day arrived when Claudia and Victoria left the house for good. With a signed check and a brief farewell, they departed, taking with them remnants of a life forever altered. Standing in the doorway, I watched their car fade around the bend, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was time to focus on the future. With Mr. Adams' guidance, I established a charitable foundation in my father's name, dedicated to providing educational opportunities for disadvantaged students, echoing the aspirations of my younger self who once felt her dreams were out of reach within our home. I enrolled in graduate school, pursuing a journalism program that aligned with my long-held career goals. With my father's network and the resources now available to me, I secured an internship at a respected newspaper. My life became a whirlwind of activity, immersed in pursuing stories and advocating for justice, themes my father and I had often discussed during his frequent business trips, now seeming like distant memories. These days, life keeps me constantly moving, carrying the principles my father instilled in me wherever I go. The house, once confining, has transformed into a true home as I've made it my own. I've repainted walls, rearranged furniture, and welcomed a rescue dog, a lively companion whose barks and playful energy filled the once empty spaces with joy. Rooms that once witnessed family discord now echo with the warmth of friends, colleagues, and shared laughter. Occasionally I retreat to my father's study, immersing myself in his old letters and weathered books. My gaze often rests on his signature at the bottom of his letter, the final message that reshaped my life. Duty and love, he wrote, are the strongest forces we wield. Use them well. In those quiet moments, surrounded by his legacy of words and wisdom, I silently pledged to honor his memory by doing just that. I married a man who had a daughter, but Marcus and I disagreed about how his daughter should be educated. Our relationship became strained. Even my bond with his daughter suffered. Then something unexpected happened. Both my husband and his daughter started ignoring me. They wouldn't respond to my greetings or talk to me. Even when they did speak, they excluded me. Despite my efforts to mend things, nothing helped. Feeling hopeless, I overheard a hurtful conversation between them. I couldn't bear being ignored like this forever, so I made the tough decision to leave home. Later, something unbelievable happened involving my husband and his daughter. My name is Mary, and I'm 30 years old. I work at an ID company. I've been married to Marcus for 2 years. He's 9 years older than me. We met through a friend and hit it off because of Marcus's kind and caring personality. My daughter Anna is 14 years old. The 3 of us live together in a condo. Anna isn't my biological daughter, she's Marcus's daughter from his previous marriage. Marcus and his ex-wife divorced when Anna was young because they were both busy with work. After the divorce, Marcus's ex-wife gave up custody of Anna and disappeared. Before Marcus and I got married, he told me about his divorce and that he had a child. I was hesitant to get involved because of this, but I decided to meet Anna anyway. Anna appeared to be a modern girl, dressed in stylish clothes, and was very cute. "Nice to meet you. I'm Anna. Thank you for always taking care of Dad." Anna greeted me cheerfully, sensing my nervousness. Nice to meet you too. I'm Mary," I replied. "Likewise. I'm grateful to Marcus," Anna continued. "Oh my gosh, don't be so nervous. I wanted to chat with you too, Anna," I said, trying to relax. Anna didn't seem to mind Marcus and me dating. In fact, she seemed somewhat happy about it. Being without a mom has always made me feel lonely. I know Dad's been doing his best for me, but Mary seems really nice and we get along well. So I'd be happy if you became my mom, Anna said. When I heard that, I felt a strong desire to be her mother. Eventually, Marcus proposed to me and I accepted. Initially, my parents were unsure about my marrying someone with a child. It's natural for parents to have concerns when their daughter is entering into a family where she's not the biological parent of the child. However, I worked hard to persuade them. "I really want to build a family with Marcus and Anna, so I put in a lot of effort," I explained. My sincere feelings must have reached my parents because they eventually gave their approval for the marriage. That's how I ended up marrying Marcus against the odds. In the beginning of our marriage, things went smoothly. Anna even started calling me Mom, and Marcus was kind to me. But over time, things began to change. After dinner, Anna didn't bother to clean her plate and just relaxed on the living room sofa. Meanwhile, Marcus sat next to her, watching TV and drinking alcohol. "Anna, please clean up your plate after eating," I reminded her. "I've told you this before, haven't I?" I thought I was stating a reasonable request, but Anna gave me a displeased look and stared at me seriously. "It's such a hassle. Can't you just do it, Mom?" "No, you need to clean up after yourself. You're in middle school now, so you should start taking responsibility. Don't lecture me about every little thing. You're so annoying." Just because I asked Anna to do the dishes, she started showing a rebellious attitude towards me. I got annoyed and ended up scolding her sternly. "What's with that attitude?" I argued with Anna, but Marcus took her side. "Hey, don't say mean things just because Anna is your stepdaughter. You should clean up after dinner yourself," Marcus said. "I'm not scolding her because she's my stepdaughter. I'm saying it for her own good." Anna and Marcus left all the household chores to me. They didn't volunteer to help, and though they'd pitch in if asked, they complained about it. Even though I said we're a family and should work together, Marcus said, "Housework is women's work." "You're being unfair to me even though I work too," Anna retorted. "When I'm busy and chores get neglected, they always complain that I'm slacking off." On top of everything, Marcus and I disagreed about Anna's education. Anna, who is 14 years old and in 8th grade, is getting ready for high school entrance exams, but she spends a lot of time idle instead of studying. Anna always says, "I don't need to study hard. I can get good grades without studying much." It's true that Anna is naturally smart, so she manages to do decently in school even with minimal studying. But without studying, passing exams, especially for the private high school she wants to attend, will be difficult. It's crucial for her future success that she develops good study habits. That's why I've been encouraging Anna to study more. But Anna just finds me annoying and tells me to shut up. She rebels against my advice. When I tried talking to Marcus about it, he didn't seem to listen. "Anna will be fine. She's smart and reliable. Nagging her like that will only demotivate her," Marcus said. "Don't say things like that. High school will be much tougher for her. If she's going to a private school, it's even more important for her to understand the importance of studying." "Shut up. You're not her real mother, so don't act all high and mighty." "Have you become more unpleasant since before we got married?" We've argued a lot about Anna's education, and it's strained our relationship. Lately, Marcus has been spending more time away from home. He says it's because of work, but I wonder if he's avoiding me. My relationship with Anna has also gotten very tense. Her rebellious attitude makes me feel sad. I think about divorce sometimes, but I can't decide. I convinced my parents to support our marriage, so I worry they'll be disappointed if we divorce after just 2 years. Amidst these worries, something strange happened one morning. When I greeted Anna, something weird happened. "Anna, good morning. Breakfast is ready, so go ahead and eat." Anna didn't respond and just went to the kitchen. I was puzzled by her behavior. Did she not hear me? I wondered, but it seemed different. No matter how much I tried to talk to her after that, Anna ignored me. Even when I said, "Have a good day," as she left for school, or "Welcome back," when she came home, she acted as if I didn't exist at all. Confused and worried, I turned to Marcus as soon as he came home from work. "Hey Marcus, I need to talk to you about something concerning Anna." But to my surprise, Marcus didn't respond to me either. "Marcus? Wait, why aren't you answering me?" I tried desperately to talk to him even through dinner, but both Marcus and Anna stayed silent, retreating to their rooms without saying a word. From that point on, they completely ignored me. No matter how hard I tried to engage with them, they wouldn't acknowledge me. Even when I tried to join their conversations, they acted as though I wasn't there. I took on all the household chores and tried to get their attention by making their favorite meals, but nothing seemed to work. Doing everything alone while also working slowly wore me down. On weekends, Marcus and Anna started going out to eat together more often, leaving me behind. Despite us being a family, I felt completely excluded, and it hurt me deeply. How did things come to this? There had been tension lately, but being treated like this was unbearable. I couldn't understand why they had suddenly started ignoring me. Every attempt I made to talk to them was met with silence, and it felt like my heart was breaking. Then one day, a phone call left me astonished. When I came home from work, Marcus and Anna were chatting. Anna said something that shocked me. "Mom is so naive, lol," making a disrespectful comment about me. She proudly said, "We ignored her on purpose, and it worked. Dad and I just acted like she wasn't there, and she ended up doing all the chores without a fuss. We should have ignored her sooner." Dad agreed, plus she's earning our living and keeping the house in order. She used to be cheeky, but lately she's been quieter and more helpful. It's really working out well, lol. I'm starting high school soon and need money, so Mom will have to work harder. LOL. Life is so comfortable now that we're just ignoring her. LOL. Laughing loudly, my husband and daughter were having this conversation, joking about how she was originally hired as a housekeeper. When I overheard them, I lost my patience completely. I'll never forgive them. They'll both pay for this. The next morning, after getting ready, I greeted Marcus and Anna, but as usual, they ignored me. Anna even clicked her tongue. After they left, I packed my things and left the house. When I unexpectedly returned later that day, my family was surprised. But when they heard what had happened, they were supportive. "You can stay as long as you need," they assured me. My parents sympathized, saying, "It must have been so tough." Their concern made me want to cry. Despite urging my parents to accept Marcus in the first place, I expected blame, but they cared more about me than anything else. A few days later, Marcus called me in a panic while I was relaxing at my parents' house. When I answered, annoyed, he immediately started shouting, "Where the hell are you? How dare you as a mother gallivant around like this? Aren't you ashamed? Get back home right now." I couldn't believe he was yelling at me like this, especially after not hearing from him for so long. Fed up, I told him firmly, "No, Marcus, I'm not coming back. I'm divorcing you. I can't deal with you anymore." "What? What nonsense are you talking? Stop acting like a child just because I ignored you for a while. We're not getting divorced," he insisted, probably because he didn't want to lose the help around the house. But then I dropped a bombshell. "No, we are getting divorced because you're cheating, aren't you?" That call I received earlier wasn't from his work, it was from his mistress's husband. Marcus hadn't been working late, he'd been meeting his lover. When he and Anna went on vacation, he was out to dinner with someone else. During their conversation, I overheard something unsettling. "Dad's lover, she's beautiful and pretty. I wish she was my mom so I could brag about it to everyone at school." "I agree with you, but she's married. Besides, I can't have her doing housework. Her hands are too beautiful. Housekeeping is for someone simple like Mary." Marcus never imagined I knew about his affair. I hit him with another bombshell. "I'm filing for divorce and demanding alimony. I've also sold our apartment. You need to leave." The apartment where we lived was bought by my father before we married and was in my name. So I hired movers and secretly moved all my belongings to a new place. After we left, I sold the old apartment and bought a new one for myself, with my father's support. I also sent Marcus and Anna's things to his parents' house with a letter explaining everything. They had nowhere else to go now that Marcus's brother's family lives with their parents and he's estranged from his father. On top of it all, he was cheating, which will likely lead to him being disowned by his family. Marcus, feeling trapped, desperately begged for forgiveness over the phone. "I'm sorry. I got carried away. I love you, Mary. Please forgive me." He apologized sincerely, but forgiveness wasn't something I could give him. I tried so hard to build a real family with them. I scolded Anna because I was worried about her future. I argued with Marcus because I wanted us to think about our daughter Anna together as a couple. But Marcus and Anna ignored me and hurt me over trivial reasons, like wanting an easy life or having things their way. I can't live with people like that anymore. You and Anna don't want a family, you just want a maid to boss around whenever it suits you, right? I've tried to make a family with you, but it's been a painful experience. I can't stay with people like you forever. I'm not thinking like that. I'm truly sorry. Anna wants to apologize to her mom too. She's not a mean-spirited girl who mocks others. Didn't Anna say she wished she had a beautiful mom? Maybe she'd be happier with someone else besides me. Just stay away from me. With that, I hung up on Marcus. A few days later, the divorce with Marcus was finalized through a lawyer. I demanded compensation from both him and his lover. Apparently, the lover's husband also demanded compensation from them. Marcus used up his savings, but it wasn't enough, so he had to take out a loan to pay both of our compensations. Marcus and Anna got kicked out of their apartment and now live in a cheap old one. Anna borrowed money from her parents to pay the damages and is now working at a relative's factory. Just when Mary thought it was all over, Marcus unexpectedly asked for reconciliation. "Hey Mary, please give us another chance." "Why are you saying this now? We're already divorced. We're strangers. Don't contact me." "Don't say that. Anna is in trouble right now." Marcus explained that because of his debts, they couldn't afford Anna's tuition at the prestigious private high school she dreamed of attending. Anna reluctantly enrolled in a public high school where she ended up being disliked and isolated by her classmates due to her difficult personality. Anna, feeling rejected by her classmates, has become withdrawn and spends her days taking out her frustrations on Marcus. On top of that, no one is doing the housework, and the apartment is getting dirtier and smelling bad. They might even get evicted soon. Marcus tearfully told his story, but I realized it was all his fault. "I won't get back together with you. Don't contact me again." I firmly refused to reconcile and blocked Marcus's number. Now I'm living peacefully at my parents' house and focusing on my work. After everything that happened with my family, I'm not thinking about marriage for a while. Right now, I just want to become better at judging men.